Use the sign-up sheet. Oh, here it comes.
Okay, yeah. I mean, she's just
We'll get the music just in time for the.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
You bet.
Let's see how many we got in here. Just a moment, we'll get started in public forum. I just want to see how many people we have signed up here. All right, so good morning, everybody. Did everybody use transit to get in today? I did. You bet I did. And it worked very, very well. And on time and got me right close here. So again, I hope everybody had a good experience there. Thanks for coming. We're going to start with our public forum this morning, which is an opportunity for the board to hear from folks who have comments on either the agenda that we have today or on other issues of concern that or maybe are not on the agenda today but will be in the future. And also, if you have other questions, we will listen. And if they're not something that TriMet can take care of, we'll have staff try to refer you to the right agency or persons to help out. And after the public forum, when we get into the general manager's comments, I'll ask the general manager to comment on anything that may have come up that the board might be interested in. So as I said, I guess we now have 10 people who've signed up for the public forum. We have 45 minutes allocated for that. And what we try to do is limit the testimony to 3 minutes to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to participate this morning. I'm going to call you up two at a time. You've got the two seats up there, and there's a timer that you'll see it go from green to yellow to red, and it'll give you the warning. And if after the red goes, I'll remind you subtly sometime to close. And if you've got a lot of folks who are making comments on the same issue and have the same position, you can also say, I agree with that person. We'd be just as effective. But anyway, the final thing, if you have information, written information to give us, get it to our secretary up here, and she'll make sure that all of us get copies. I see we do have some already that have been given to us. I'll make sure the board get those. So with that, I'm going to start, and with Stephen Kingsbury and Ron Swearin. I guess this is. Oh, here it is. Good morning. Please proceed.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Kingsbury from Beaverton. Last fall, the United Nations released their climate report, and shortly after that, our federal government released their climate report. They're both dire indeed. We got where we are today taking the easy route. This is no longer an option. I have observed the small TriMet buses in parking lots and on shoulders of streets idling. I have observed TriMet support vehicles in parking lots on the shoulder of a street, idling. They're wasting fuel, your money, and adding extra pollution to our region. With modern engines, with electronic fuel injection, and the old husband tales no longer apply to idling. For example, this is idling while parked, not in traffic. More fuel is used in 10 seconds of idling than starting your vehicle. For every 2 minutes you idle, you could drive 1 mile. Vehicles are designed for 50,000 starts. If you start your vehicle 10 times a day, that's over 13 and a half years. Starting a vehicle only adds $10 to $15 in maintenance. However, if you idle 10 minutes a day, that's 60 hours a year. You can drive 1,500 miles or save $180 on the fuel you wasted. Vehicle manufacturers do not recommend excessive idling. It only takes 30 seconds to warm up a vehicle before you can drive it. 3.8 million gallons of fuel is wasted every day in the United States on unnecessary idling. That's 38,000 tons of CO2 added to our atmosphere. UPS drivers, for example, turn their vehicles off at every stop, saving UPS $180 per year per vehicle. My presentation today consists of 3 requests. First of all, develop an idle-free policy for your organization and educate your drivers. Second, I have observed drivers waiting for their passengers at transit centers idling. This is affecting the air quality of the MAX riders waiting for their train. Have idle-free zone signs mounted at driver eye level, and I've included some examples. Third, have a public service announcements printed on your buses. People actually read them. It can help, and I can help write it if you need it. And finally, idling in traffic is required. Idling while parked is optional. It's time to rethink idling. It's also time to think outside the box for the common good. Remember, no one will blame us for climate change except our children and grandchildren. If you believe in climate change, please develop a policy and turn your key and be idle-free. Does the board have any questions for me?
No, I want to say thank you. We'll ask the staff, if they haven't looked into this already, to maybe give us a report on that, because I think your points are well taken, and the statistics are pretty amazing when you put it like that. So thank you for.
And I have references on there where I found it.
Thank you. Does any of the board have any other comments or questions? No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your diligence. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Ron. Good
Yeah,
morning.
good morning. Ron Swarren, for the record, 1543 Southeast Umatilla Street, Portland, Oregon. I attached a couple documents to my testimony. Sorry, I can't provide so many color copies. I made hundreds of copies in the last several years. It's just getting to be too much for. Maybe in the future I will. Anyway, what I want to talk about is there is a big issue that's resurfaced again in this area regarding transportation, interstate travel, etc. The Washington legislature decided that they'd try to reopen the analysis of the interstate bridges for replacement. And this was through a bill, and they introduced a couple sessions ago, and there was a meeting they held in December here in Oregon. I think this is really a foolish idea, because as I read the projections of population growth, I think they say 700,000 in the greater 7-county area. It could be more. I've heard of a 75% increase in freight by 2030. We're at the maximum I-5 and I-205 now. If the I-5 bridges were replaced, it would be a major disruption of travel, and what we would result with is even more traffic coming into central Portland, making it probably the worst traffic jam in the country, or maybe on the West Coast at least. I mean, it's hard to imagine how bad that traffic would be if those increases happen and we have no other routes than I-5 and I-205. So I've supported a third bridge and a west bridge. Clark County did a study a few years ago where they indicate some possible crossings. Generally, we're talking about a west bridge in the Burlington Northern corridor connecting out to West Union area, and then an east bridge, I think, from Lady Island to Troutdale, which is also shown as a possibility here. And I think the beauty of those for transit, though, is that really has great potential for new transit routes. This western route, I found it would cross 6 TriMet lines, connect to 4 MAX stops, connect to the Orenco station. So it really could facilitate a northwest district. Plus, there's highways that Columbia County services now, but those could be interconnected. And the east side, Camas and Washougal are actually growing pretty fast. The remarkable thing around here is the suburbs are growing fast, and those are scenic areas. So I think Camas and Washougal could be connected into the Gresham Max. And I've spoken to the new CEO of CTRAN, and he's very supportive of this too. And I asked him to keep reminding you that this is an idea we should pursue. So I guess that time went faster than I thought.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your tenacity. All right, the next two we have signing up are Nasiria Munyabula Iza. Is that how, did I pronounce that even close? No, okay. All right, you're gonna help me on that one. And then Sadia Gonzalez.
Good morning. My name is Nasira Munyabuliza. I'm from Denmark. My schedule is for 4:30 a.m. to 1:30 from Beaverton to Denmark. I'm concerned about to cancel the station for the King Hills because it's my safety and behalf of my crew. 40% employee of Denmark, they take marks. So, because I'm a woman and I'm from outside the country, with my experience for the safety, so I feel safety when I'm here because I don't have any problem when I work to go to work. So if you guys cancel the station, I'm worrying about the homeless. One time somebody attacked me. So I'm nervous because it happened to me, and I've been working 19 years at the mark. So I hope you guys think about it. The 32nd you cancel for the station, somebody's life. So I was asking you guys concerned about not to cancel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sadia Gonzalez. Also, I work in a Mac club. I came over here to testify. I'm a single mom. I working from, I take a max every day, twice a day for 5 days. And when I heard and mentioned that you got intention to close the King Hill, was beginning to be, got a little frustration because I have two experience previous, the two guys in different time, last year and this year tried to be assault me. And I'm single mom, and I know the next, you cancel, the next stop probably Providence. And Providence area, you heard the news and the cities have a lot of concern about police around, a lot of people be hurt. And sometimes, like I'm single mom, I thinking like what happened with mama go for work and working hard and don't come back. And I thinking about, I represent another ladies and my co-worker. They make they're strong worker, and every day they go and in few minutes something happen, and you don't come back with your kids and you rest to the family. This is my concern, and I please is 40% that are co-worker use the TriMet, and I need to walk in. I feel like I've been completely safe for that situation. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate you both coming in.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have one sheet. It has two people on it, Andrea Speary and Cal Toth, or Toth. Okay, then maybe Dagny, how is it?
Yes.
Okay, come on up, please. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so I've been here. I don't have any speech per se, but I have a couple of notes here to remind me of what not to say, maybe. Okay. So my name is Cal Toth, Dr. Cal Toth. I'm a retired professor in the College of Engineering at Portland State and computer science, and a resident of Goose Hollow. I testified previously. One of the things I mentioned was that Goose Hollow is one of the densest and most rapidly densifying neighborhoods in the city. And this factor, I hope, has been thought about. Now, the main thing I want to mention here today, though, was that when I attended the September 20th meeting in Goose Hollow, where two TriMet reps talked about the plans to save 2 minutes, I asked the question about how they studied the problem. Am I breathing too heavily on this? And I was very surprised that they did not say anything specific about how the problem was studied. I thought they'd say something about, well, they used very good modeling and traffic analysis techniques and studied the problem thoroughly and came up with the 2 minutes. So the reason I asked this question was partly because my background is in queuing theory, network analysis, traffic analysis. I worked on 5 different air traffic control systems internationally, including Canada and Switzerland. And my own assessment is that, back of the envelope assessment, is that the change to remove the TriMet stop in Kings Hill, or in fact any of the TriMet stops, will increase the transit times, not decrease them, because of the queuing problems at the neighboring stops. And if you think about one, I know about also the one at Skidmore Fountain, but the one in Goose Hollow, Kings Hill, has 2 neighboring stops. It gets very busy, and the whole area is really densifying quickly. So we're getting a lot more people on the 3 platforms. And the high school is being expanded, night school is being put in, et cetera, et cetera. I've mentioned all those things before. So my assessment is that the queuing problem, getting onto the trains and getting off the trains, will build up at the 2 neighboring stops if the middle one is removed. And that'll actually slow down the trains, because it takes a lot more time to fill them up and take them down than to move to the next stop. So that's my brief but spectacular testimony.
Good, right.
Quoting
Thank you for
something
that.
from OPB.
Thank you.
I've not heard that analysis. Obviously, that's something we'll have to look at if we make any decisions. And again, I think the decisions we're looking at the April or May meeting for a discussion on this.
Yeah, I can
Spring?
comment that in my.
Okay, all right, good, all right. Great, thank you. Please.
My name is Dagny Haug, and I'm a vendor at Portland Saturday Market, as well as serving as the secretary on the board of directors, member-elected board of directors. Throughout this public commentary process, you've heard a number of themes consistently, many having to do with accessibility for the elderly and disabled, as well as safety concerns. And as valid as those concerns are, I'd like to offer another perspective. I began my Portland Saturday Market business in 2008, so I can't claim the veteran status of many of my fellow vendors, but I've got some years under my belt as this gig. As a native Portlander, I was stunned to discover what a hub of tourism Portland has become, or maybe always was. I had no reason to suspect such a thing when I was just a civilian. Surveys of market attendees over the past decade have revealed that roughly 70% of our customers are visiting as tourists. 70%. Now, I'm not knocking tourists or denying them credit for being able to navigate an unfamiliar city, but I know that when I'm visiting someplace, I really appreciate the dots being put close together. Asking our visitors to negotiate those few extra blocks, often with their luggage in tow, with the elimination of the Skidmore Fountain stop, does not leave tourists with the impression that we're considerate hosts. As a member and representative of one of the city's top tourist attractions, as well as a native Portlander, I'd like for visitors to have a positive experience of our city. Making it easy for them to get where they want to be is a fundamental building block in an enjoyable tourist experience. TriMet and Portland Saturday Market have enjoyed a symbiotic relationship for years. We've encouraged ridership by offering free transit tickets as an alternative to parking validation, and the Skidmore Fountain Max stop has been welcoming tourists and locals alike to Saturday Market since Max's inception in 1986. I hope you can recognize the value not just for the small businesses that make up the Saturday Market and the surrounding area, not just in maximizing the convenience for elderly and disabled passengers, not just in maintaining an access link to an underserved neighborhood, but the value in the very spirit of keeping our city's reputation for being easy to navigate as a visitor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, both of you. The next two are Elizabeth Cooper Myers and S. Oren Panapento. Panapento. Panapento, okay.
Am I
Good morning.
first? Okay. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Myers, or Elizabeth Cooper Myers, or also known as Lizzie. I am a vendor at Portland Saturday Market, but I'm also the vice chair of the board at Portland Saturday Market. I'm also a thriving business in my 15th year at Portland Saturday Market, where my husband and I run that business, and we have 6 children as well. And we all are very local shoppers and very much so local transporters. My son is a security guard downtown. He uses TriMet to use in order to actually navigate around. My children, directly from Portland Saturday Market, get to go and navigate around the city, right there from where I put them on the train to go and actually find the city and get to know Portland. And so there's a personal side there for me. But then also from the 250 businesses, that, as Dagny said, so much of that is tourists, and they do like those lines to be brought very closely. I think it's vital for this stop to be there. I hear that maybe there's a consideration that just weekends would be a consideration, but there's other businesses with other people, with other families that are trying to support those businesses that right up and down Ankeny, right there in that neighborhood, that are very important businesses to the community, but also depend on that stop being there. I got to make sure I have my spot here, sorry. I don't want there to be confusion as well. When you shut down a stop for just part of the week and then have it going for the other parts of the week, it's very easy for people to just think that that's not a stop, that's a continual stop on the weekends, if they are familiar with it during the rest of the week. Plenty of the people who are tourists, they're here for chunks of the week and then for the weekend as well. It's very easy to find that that might not be a stop that gets you close to the waterfront or where to Portland Saturday Market actually is. And again, thriving businesses that really do, they participate in this local community. A lot of people who are very locally minded as well in this community, keeping their dollars here in this community. I'm pretty important, I think. I think also to consider the fact that there's been millions spent on the historical site of the Skidmore area and also the waterfront park of taxpayers' dollars. Is a pretty important thing to consider when you're thinking about shutting down such an intricate part of the city, something that's known for being here. I implore you, please don't close the Skidmore Market, the Skidmore Fountain stop. I just think there's too many things that are more important than shaving 2 minutes off of a couple of commuters' time to get to work. We're talking about lives, we're talking about families, we're talking about vitality in the city. It's the greater good. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How about timing, boy? Good.
My name is Oren Panapento. My husband and I have been members of the Portland Saturday Market for 32 years, and I'm also on the Market Board of Directors. I'm speaking for a customer today, though. Unfortunately, I didn't get his name, but last fall he visited the market and heard about the potential closing of the Skidmore Fountain stop. He was disheartened. He loves coming to the market, but he needs 2 canes to walk. And he said he can just manage to walk from the RMAX stop through the market and back. Any further, and he won't be able to do it. There are a lot of people like him. The market draws an amazing number of tourists from all over the world, and Portland relies heavily on those tourists to stimulate the economy. The city has made investments to attract conventions and tourism, including a MAX line to the airport. Again and again, visitors have complimented Portland for being such an easy city to move through. Many are older or alternatively abled. I'm concerned that what impact the removal of this stop will have on those people. It's easy to say that it's just a short, healthy 3-minute walk from the Old Town Chinatown stop to the Saturday Market. That's fine for those of us who can walk unaided, but what about others like my customer? How can we justify neglecting those who struggle? The Portland Saturday Market has endured a lot in its 45-year history, but we've stuck with it and provided a positive force in the Old Town area, even when it was struggling with decay. Now the area is experiencing new life. Mercy Corps and the University of Oregon are drawing in more people to the area every day. This is not a time for TriMet to cut back service to the area. As to saving 2 minutes travel time through downtown Portland, how long does it take for a trip from Gresham to Hillsborough? Probably about an hour, I'd guess. Is that 2 minute savings even perceptible, given the cost that it would mean to so many? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Janelle Olson and Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Janelle Olson. I have a little bit of notes. I'm here to express my upset, outrage, whatever you would call it, with the possible closure of the Skidmore Max station. I am a small business owner. I own a plant shop called Hammer and Vine on West Burnside, but I'm also a Saturday market vendor. For the last 8 years, I've had a booth at the Saturday market. We first started doing the Saturday market because a friend suggested we try selling some plants and terrariums we made there, and we've been there every weekend since. The Saturday market gave us the ability to grow our business where we otherwise would not have had that opportunity. I think that the reason it bothers me so much that this Skidmore stop could close is that accessibility really matters, and I think that not having a stop will affect our sales, and as small or large as that may be, any effect to our sales will be less vendors will show up. Less vendors means less customers, and that cycle will continue until I feel like it could be the slow end to our market. I think that it would be really wonderful if other small businesses could have the opportunity I had to start with nothing and build a small, thriving business. And I truly believe if this stop closes, it could be the end to us. I also find it kind of ridiculous that this is a possibility, considering it is the second busiest stop on the weekends. I feel like that's a no-brainer. I just ask you to please not close the stop and think of the small businesses and the future of our community and our artist community, which is really very, very important to Portland. Thank you.
No, thank you. Mr. Bridge Crane.
Good morning, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. And before I also express a couple comments about the stop closures, I'm going to point to our lovely illuminated screen here. And TriMet is really, I think, chartered more as a quasi-governmental or an actual government organization. You're not even a nonprofit, and I hope that the next time this comes around, or maybe you can clarify whether there's specific language, but I'm interested in service. I'm not really interested in this TriMet trying to masquerade as a business. I don't think we'll have time to really get into the discussion of the recent $15 million business expense when a Max didn't hit its emergency stop button and injured a woman's legs in a jury verdict. But customer service and a service plan is what I think many of us would prefer to see, rather than TriMet trying to masquerade as a business plan with all the weird different governmental financing you get, and then having $15 million expenses for injuries while continuing to have a very weird, erratic, non-business oriented fair enforcement plan that targets and harasses the poor. So please keep that under advisement for future language entitling the business plan or hopefully service plan in the future. We've heard testimony from some of the closed stop areas, particularly near MAC, Multnomah Athletic Club. And I hope that as a community, we're comprehensively interested in the full spectrum of quality of life. So I hope that in addition to having Harry Saporta, I assume he's still the security or safety director, talking maybe with some people at the Multnomah Athletic Club, we'll also make sure that anybody that works at Multnomah Athletic Club that's income is low enough that they get reduced income fare, that between TriMet and the Multnomah Athletic Club, we can have a comprehensive arrangement so that there's safety at whatever stop, and also that low-income workers at Multnomah Athletic Club are not paying full price to ride if they're eligible for a lower fare. Going to the Saturday market stop, or as for some reason we insist on programming it as Skidmore Fountain, even though I think in everyone's brain it's that stop under Burnside Bridge. But we never called it the Burnside Bridge stop. We always insist on Skidmore Fountain. Lovely fountain, but the MAX doesn't actually stop right there. The issue that, one of the issues tangential to this that you have to address is people's belief in the honesty and transparency of TriMet. Now we have the hop card fare system, so when you make your decision, you'll have much greater credibility. Passengers will be able to believe in your decisions more if you can really tell me that hop cards are used less under the Burnside Bridge than they are at the Old Town Chinatown stop. Of course, there are problems in our society. Some people are dissuaded from using the Burnside under the bridge stop because of certain safety or appearance concerns, but use that hop card data and show us some actual facts. And if the facts are that more hop cards are used to board or under the bridge, then that's the stop that should remain in service, not Old Town Chinatown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Tristan Isaac and Connor Wrighton. Please proceed.
Good morning, board members. My name is Tristan. I'm with Bus Riders Unite. I'm here today to bring to your attention some negligent behavior on the part of certain transit police officers. So as a lot of you may be aware, Portland has been experiencing some extreme climate events recently with lots of snow, sub-freezing temperatures, and the opening of public warming centers. And during one such night recently, I received reports indicating that transit police officers were being more aggressive than usual about ejecting people from our transit system due to some individuals' predilection towards seeking shelter aboard buses and trains, having no other option, and they're warm and relatively comfortable. It isn't immediately obvious to me how kicking people off of a warm, comfortable train improves safety. Kind of seems the opposite, perhaps even a little cruel. Transit police officers and TriMet employees should have been directing people towards supportive services, such as warming shelters. If, for instance, the Rider Advocate program had been active and its members had been present on the system, that could have been their role, helping people to navigate towards lines and MAX trains that will take them to warming shelters and things like that, instead of criminalizing people for just seeking shelter. TriMet does offer fare-free rides on New Year's Eve, for instance, so it doesn't seem to be too much of a stretch to imagine that they could offer the same service on any such nights where circumstances require that warming shelters be open to help people arrive at those shelters safely and maybe save some lives. In closing, I just want to urge the board to reconsider the role of the transit police and instead revive the Rider Advocate program as a community-centered solution to safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Good morning. My name is Connor Wrighton, and I'm with the Northwest Alliance for Clean Transportation. I testified here several times during the non-diesel bus procurement plan, so I'm sure it will come as no surprise that I'm here in advocacy of looking at all alternative fuels for new bus procurement, specific to the East Side line expansion on Division. It is my understanding that a study came out recently with listing several technologies for the new buses that will be moving along that line. Several of alternative fuels were not included in that, including renewable natural gas. And it is my hope that we will revise that and look at renewable natural gas as a potential alternative. Some of the data that I've presented here before has shown that technology will pay for itself in a pretty short order, will allow you to have a reliable technology that runs along that line at a low cost to your customers. It is also my understanding that the reason this is not being considered is because of a reticence for using too many fuels out of a single bus depot. I am not entirely sure for the reasoning behind that, but it is also my understanding that transit agencies across the West Coast have used multiple fuels out of a single depot, and I have a significant belief in TriMet that you can do what it takes to solve this logistical challenge and make a better environmental, health, and financial choice for this new line. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe the general manager can have some staff people talk with him that understand what we're doing on that, because I think there might be some things that aren't correct there, what you said, but I think it's worthwhile understanding, okay? Thank you. Thank you. All right, Mark Fitz and Lou Church.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
So I brought an addendum to a bid that you just went through last week for fuel. This appeared on my desk, the solicitation. I read it. Happened to be at the same exact moment I'm typing a letter to present to the Oregon legislature on the cap and trade legislation that is almost guaranteed to pass. Just to start, I'm a fan of TriMet. I ride it a few times a year. I grew up in Portland, didn't have a driver's license until I was 18 because of how great the service TriMet has. I have a high opinion of the service you provide. This is not a criticism of that. But I do not believe this board is aware of the decisions you're making. In the grand scheme of things on carbon emissions, you are RJ Reynolds arguing that cigarettes are okay. Oregon has a clean fuel standard. Oregon also is about to pass a cap and trade standard that's going to shift extreme expense on people who import CO2 emitting fuels into our state. Do you guys have this? If you read where I highlighted, somebody in my industry said, hey man, we're going to see cheaper B20 and B30 fuels. Would you be interested in low carbon fuels? To where your staff answered, no, there was a discussion, TriMet's Bus Maintenance and Environmental Services Department, about this solicitation before it was posted, about not going above 5% biodiesel because you used it 10 years ago and it was inconvenient. Tried a hybrid car 10 years ago, didn't like it. Tried an iPhone once, didn't like it. Rode TriMet 10 years ago, wasn't a good experience. That's what your staff is saying. Now, what I want you to be aware of, though, is bigger than this. What's really occurring. Oregon is saying no more CO2 emissions. If you bring petroleum diesel into Oregon, there is an extreme cost under 2 programs for every gallon you sell. Okay? If you are not reducing your CO2 emissions, you are shifting that on me to go out in the market and produce it. You are saying in this bid, we will pay 10, 20, 50 cents more a gallon. And on top of it, put it to my customers to go out and get your 20% reduction. I don't think you want that. And I wanted to bring this to your attention. And I want to state there are a giant ton of solutions immediately available that other government fleets are using. Look to the Clean Cities Coalition. They've got a whole coordinated of actual people on the ground using fuel. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say when I read this, I maybe also, again, you could have somebody talk with this gentleman, because what I'm reading here in this response is that TriMet had some problem with gelling issues and engine performance on that with anything above the B5. So again, those things may have changed.
That insults the intelligence.
Okay.
That
so
literally insults the intelligence.
So if that's not true, or if the technology has changed in terms of the production, I think that's worth it. Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Thanks. Appreciate it. Mr. Church?
My name's Lou. I just had a question about the green light. Do we watch that until it turns yellow for the 3-minute part?
Yeah, it goes at the 30 minutes, 30 seconds left to go. It goes to the yellow and,
all right,
and
thanks.
the red, okay?
My name's Lou. I'm with PSU, Progressive Student Union, and Transit Riders Union. I want to talk about people and names today. I tried to make some handwritten notes. I had a prepared 3-minute thing, but I'm not going to go with that. I wanted to thank some of the people, and I apologize if I mispronounce people's names. People who talked today from both Saturday Market, which looked very organized, and from the MAC Club in terms of workers and advocates. Looked like Matthias, Aaliyah, Oren, Janelle, Charles, and Tristan in particular from Bus Riders Unite and Opal. In terms of names, I think it's really important to remember Karen Batts. I'm not sure if Karen Batts is a name you all are familiar with. Perhaps the board member who works for Alyssa Kenny Geyer has heard of Karen Batts before. But one speaker mentioned, I think it was Tristan, about poor people or houseless people freezing to death in the cold. Karen Batts was a grandma, an African-American woman. She froze to death in the cold 2 years ago, downtown Portland, in a parking garage. The last contact she had with a government agency was fare inspectors who kicked her off Max downtown. She was kind of sleeping on 3 or 4 seats. So I think my comment not being written out today is just it's important to keep these stops open downtown. We noticed the, I think it was a 50-paragraph article in Willamette Week about the importance of having the trains run on time and saving 2 minutes here and there. I would just say in conclusion that there's a famous politician in Italy during the 1930s who emphasized making the trains run on time. I would suggest that people need to come before, I don't know, fast food or Starbucks time measurement criteria. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that is all I have signed up, but I've also noticed that I go from number 11 to 13. So if there's somebody who signed up to speak and I haven't called your name, is there somebody else that that signed up and has not been called? Okay, I'm seeing nothing, so I'm going to close the public forum, and we're going to move right into our normal business meeting. So what I'm going to do is call our regular business meeting of February 27th, 2019 to order. And the first thing on our agenda is our board reports, where the board who sits on various committees can give a report to the rest of the board and to you about what's gone on. So the first one is the Finance and Audit Committee. Director Stovall.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, everybody, for coming in. As always, we greatly, greatly appreciate the public forum and the insight and the input that we received there. We do take that to heart. In just a quick review of the Finance and Audit Committee, this morning we covered 3 items. The first item we covered was just a review, a quick review of the verdict that just came out that was referenced a little bit earlier in regards to the accident that occurred with the MAX train. We just had a brief discussion and conversation about that and an update from the General Counsel. The next item we looked at is the procurement that we're going to be talking about here a little bit later on the LRV, the light rail vehicle, kind of that whole piece of it, how we're going to look at getting those refurbished. It's something that we've been working on for a long time and worked directly with the ATU as we needed to up our ability to increase the frequency of getting these light rail vehicles refurbished, and the committee was fully supportive of the resolution that's coming later this morning. And then lastly, we actually had an opportunity to take a look at something in regards to kind of looking forward at board responsibility and ethics as we continue to move forward and have that conversation among the board. We really want to take a look at making sure that we fully understand our full responsibilities as we look to move forward in the board, moving forward with some resolutions at some point in the future. So those are the 3 issues that we covered at the Finance and Audit Committee. Are there any questions that I can answer? Anything that I missed from our other 2 Finance and Audit Committee members?
Good report. I don't have anything to add. Other questions? No, thank you. Well, let's move on to the next report, which is on the Metro Policy Advisory Committee. We also call it MPAC. Director Way.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So just 2 items to share on the MPAC committee from this month, which they met February 13th. So the first was around the housing bond implementation. As folks may remember, voters approved a pretty large housing bond for a tune of $652.8 million directed towards going into affordable housing in order to create permanently affordable homes across the Portland area for up to about 12,000 people. So as a result of that, there is an oversight committee that's established, and their next meeting is on March 4th. They also have an approved work plan that was adopted end of January by Metro Council. And we know that we have a big housing crisis here, not only in the Portland metro area, but in our whole state, where there really isn't enough affordable housing supply to meet up with the demands. And so as a transit agency, our staff, and I want to give a shout out to Jeffrey Owen, who I don't see him here, but he has been the primary policy staffer that's really been staffing a lot of the MPAC meetings that I have missed due to personal reasons and for work schedules not working out. But really want to thank Jeffrey for going there and taking really great notes, and also being our TriMet representative to make sure that we are also thinking about transit when we talk about these new dollars getting implemented in the community around building more affordable housing. The second piece is the 2040 Planning and Development Grants for the 2019 grant cycle. This is previously known as CPDG, or the Community Planning and Development Grants. They were put in place since 2006. They are funded by the regional excise tax on certain construction projects, and the policy emphasis here for this cycle is on lower income housing supply, which again goes back to just trying to address the problem of the housing needs here in our area. And then there are a couple of different funding targets that was discussed in terms of how the monies would be spent on various things like equitable development projects inside the UGB. For folks in the audience, Metro is our government agency that really takes a look at the urban growth boundary and whether or not we should expand it, change it, modify it, etc. So hence all of the work that we are trying to do around housing and transit development is also should be in coordination with the UGB. And there is a note here that says the new procedures will now allow a private entity to apply directly if they have an endorsement of a local jurisdiction. So
Good.
I'd be happy to take any questions if folks have.
Sounds like it was a lot of information on the housing, so thanks.
Yes,
Yeah.
a lot of housing information.
Yes, sir. You have a question? No questions. All right, no, I see no questions. Thank you very much for your report. Let's move on to the last board report then, is the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, TEAC. Director Gonzalez.
Thank you. We met on February 12th, and it was shared with 12 of our community partners at this meeting, so we had a pretty good representation this time. And we were able to go over a couple of different changes and provide updates. We focused a lot on providing updates on the rollout of HOP and how it's been getting both implemented in the community, changing the number of vendors, as well as how it's simplifying all of the ticket purchasing options. So the choices of how you purchase tickets are simplified down from 60 different pathways down to 30. We're going to be sunsetting the 7 and 14-day passes. The HOP pass is now at a 35% adoption rate overall system-wide. And so that is helping us both in the simplification process, and it's good to see the uptick. We've increased the number of locations of retail networks from 150 to 500 region-wide. And there's tens of thousands of free cards that have been distributed to community organizations that have helped in the adoption and for people to kind of help with that transition. And we've also been holding some ticket exchanges to help customers trade in paper tickets for HOP passes. So there's a lot of fronts where we're really helping make that transition over. We also provided some updates on some internal leadership changes. We introduced Marla Blagg as our TriMet's new Executive Director for Safety and Security, as well as our new Chief Operating Officer, Sam Dessou Jr., who are both going to be invited for a future TEAC meeting to introduce themselves and meet some of our community partners. We did have some discussions along the mission, vision, values conversation, so we were able to share the latest language that the agency's considering. We heard some great feedback from our community partners about things they either thought were missing in the language or things that they thought should be spelled out a little more clearly. So we've brought those comments back to the agency. And We also provided an overview on the Access Transit Grant Program. So that's the annual grant process that's providing to over 90 community-based organizations access to over $1 million of free fare resources. So this includes grant resources for the separate from the HB 2017 fund that we've been discussing so much, and provides a pool of $700,000 in fare resources to 23 school districts serving high school students that are receiving free and reduced lunch. So we were able to talk a lot about both the 2017 funds as well as these other grant programs and how they're being utilized by our school partners.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions for Director Gonzalez? Thank you. Great report. Appreciate it. All right. Well, let's move on to the General Manager's report. And Mr. General Manager, maybe you have any response you'd like to give us from some of the testimony this morning before you get into this item that's up on the screen.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Yes, probably a couple things I would comment on to the public delegations this morning. The first one on the ILEAM policy is I really applaud the comments that came forward today. I think it is something the agency has been having some quiet discussions behind the scenes. So I say stay tuned on that piece, because other transit agencies do this, and this agency needs to move in that direction as well. So I think it was just really want to applaud that delegation in particular this morning. So stay tuned there. Secondly, to the station closures, at the last board meeting I indicated we'd probably be targeting around coming to the board around the April session. I think it's probably going to be around the May or June time frame. We are out looking at also looking at what our riders think. So we're actually doing some research around what they think of this topic as well, not just those impacted by the station physically in the proximity. So there's some other work being looked at as well. A bit of a time frame. So we're still very much in the listening stage before we really formulate any formalized viewpoints, which ultimately will come to the board for a discussion and recommendation. In terms of the actual other parts of the report this morning, I want to talk about three things. Firstly, the Southwest Corridor. I want to give you some really good news there. Also talk about the 2040 fleet conversion, a bit of an update there for you. We'll typically cover off quite briefly this morning the ridership for the month in question for January, and I'll bring up Ellen Lato. We'll talk about, as you can see on the screen directly over there, a picture of what our new branding colors are going to look like as we are investing significantly in expanding the fleet, not only of buses but also train cars. Now is the time to look at what a new natural fleet rebrand fresh will look like, but more will come on that piece as well. So firstly, Southwest Corridor, just really happy to inform the board and the public today that the FTA has approved the Southwest Corridor Light Rail project for entry into the formal project development stage. So this is really significant because what the milestone now means that any project funds the partners spend moving forward can actually be counted as a local match for the federal New Starts program that we will apply for down the road. So this is a significant milestone for us, and I think it's also a signal of the FTA's historic relationship with TriMet that this agency delivers. So I think it's a sign of confidence this far along in the project. So, of course, it's an immensely complex project. A lot more to come. We have many more complex details to work through, but I think the signal we weren't anticipating at this point in time, but I think it's a really positive signal this far in advance. So, good news there. Secondly, the battery electric bus charging infrastructure, as we all know, and the board's decision and support of the changing to electrification in the future, I'll call other than distillate future, likely leading to electric, but who knows in the years ahead what ultimately transpires. But I do want to pass on a really important initiative that's underway, and we've been having discussions with PGE. And they have filed a petition with the Oregon Public Utility Commission that would allow the utility to actually to install and maintain most all of the charging infrastructure for TriMet's planned bus electric fleet on our property. So not just bringing the transformers up to the property and saying, over to you, but actually moving into the infrastructure itself. So a real positive part of a lot of dialogues have been happening for, frankly, quite a number of months between the parties at the senior levels of the organizations. So we think this really focuses initially, follows up on the pilot project at the Merlot Garage, and also where PGE installed the charging facilities for TriMet's 5 battery electric buses. That was the start. If this is approved by the PUC, or Public Utilities Commission, TriMet and PG will work together on the next phase of the battery electric plan, which will locate up to 80 electric buses based out of the Powell garage. So you can start to see the network if this goes into place in, again, a very positive support structure to help us on avoidance of capital, but under their infrastructure pieces, part of a leveraging and allowing us to accelerate up. We do have a funding gap, as you know, for the full 2040 fleet conversion to the back end, but these types of initiatives help us manage that relationship into the future. So, and this could be very helpful for other things that we don't even know yet today. So, again, we're supporting PGE in this initiative, and I think it's really exciting. So, kind of way to crayon outside the box a bit through innovation. Next up, in terms of the ridership, just for January, we provided just over 8 million trips system-wide this last month. The ridership was just 0.4% down, so still within tolerance. About 1.1 million weekly trips on the bus. That was down 0.8%. That was largely driven by a dip in the weekend ridership within the spectrum of the 7 days. Max, the ridership grew by 0.5%, so it was up. So sometimes these things trade off between bus and rail, but you look at the aggregate on the network basis. The weekday ridership, that was up by over 1%. And the orange line was down slightly, about a 0.5 percentage point. And West continues to be the challenge within the portfolio, if you will, of services, being down about 11% again on that monthly basis. So it seems to be, now it is coming off the previous month, which had a lot of track disruption issues going on. So that, I think some of that is related, but the ridership is still continue to struggle at West. We continue to market it appropriately, and I think we've got to watch this one closely. Okay. But we do have a long-term contract with the host railway, so it's really not a lot of flexibility in the terms that come with it, and which is not uncommon in dealing with host railways. So next up, I'm just going to ask if Alan Lato can come up and join me, and Alan is going to, as you can see by the first picture on the screen, give us an update of the business plan. And I think it's here where I'll maybe just, before I turn it over to Alan, talk to one of the other public delegations' comments around that we don't focus on the customer. Well, in an organization such as this, and I think we all believe you need a business plan, because there's many parts of the spokes on the wheel, and the customer is one of the centerpieces of this. So it is not absent, it is embedded into safety, financial responsibility, all the spectrum of our responsibility. So I just would respond in that context that the customer is front and center. It is, in French they say the raison d'etre, the reason for being, is very much centered around a customer environment. And you'll see it in the KPIs, the initiatives, the strategies we're undertaking. And in fact, I would even encourage, as another example of this, what you'll see in your briefing here this morning at the end, around some of the innovative products and services we're doing that aren't just about the physical bus or the physical train. It's about how we integrate this business overall. And the business plan that Alan will talk to you about also does capture our changing vision, mission, and values that was part of the strategy session the board participated in with Jeffrey Tumlin back in, I think it was November, that really talked about the agency evolving from a transit only of buses and trains to an integrated mobility agency, so we can actually be a real thought leader and an executor of the customer on an integrated basis. So I would probably have a different perspective that we're not customer centric. Do we have lots of work to do? Absolutely. But it never ends. But I would suggest it is so strategic for us. It's one of the foundation parts of our business plan. So, Alan, over to you.
Thank you. Want to tell you, oh, there we go. It is working now. Want to talk to you briefly about the business plan. As you know, this is an annual plan with a 5-year look ahead that we update each year to make sure that we are paying attention to the new opportunities and challenges that we face as we go forward. And the purpose of the business plan, or strategic plan as a lot of transit agencies call it, is to align our efforts to make sure that we're all heading in the same direction, that we are paying attention to what matters most. And as Doug mentioned, one of the four main the four categories of the business plan that we need to look at from the perspective is of our customers. They are the ultimate test of whether we are delivering what we need to deliver in the region. The first point I wanted to mention is we had a discussion with you at the board retreat back in November about the vision, mission, values, and you heard from Director Gonzalez about the discussion at TIAC the other day. And this is the current draft that is in the business plan, this new business plan draft for the vision, mission, values. And just briefly, the vision being TriMet will be the leader in delivering convenient, sustainable, and integrated mobility options necessary for our region to be one of the world's top 25 most livable places. And the idea here is responding in some ways to the direction we got from all of you to think big and think bold, to have a bold statement. It also clearly identifies mobility options, mobility management, and integration as part of what we do, but it should be clearly read, even though the word isn't in there, that transit is the core of what we do. And the idea of the top 25 being at least something that has some external validation, to the point where if we are starting to show up in those kinds of lists, then we recognize from external sources that there is something positive going on, not just from our own claims. The mission to connect people with valued mobility options that are convenient, reliable, and welcoming for all. Again, mobility options with transit being the core, but connecting in other ways. And convenient, reliable, and welcoming for all should be read as welcoming for all includes things like accessibility. And then finally, values: safety, inclusivity, equity, community, and teamwork. We're going to, that obviously is the draft for now. We'll continue to gather the input and engagement with the community that we're working on right now, and I have a slide on later, and try to aim for having a final set of statements in the final business plan, which we will release at the April board meeting. Those go on top of our strategy map, and you can see those four categories with customers at the top and the goals that we have identified for the past few years. Those goals have not changed. That's strategically important to not set a brand new goal each year, but to have something that is a longer range effort. And the mobility options, again, you can see transit in the center with all of the different kinds of mobility options, some of them new in the last few years, that people could use to connect to transit or to complete their trip or to start their trip, and looking at ways for us to improve our ability to connect our customers to those needs. And you'll hear a presentation about that later today during the briefing. The strategic priorities on page 1 and 2 of the plan are strategic priorities and points of emphasis. The strategic priorities are intended to be multi-year priorities that are reflected here and reflected here in the budget as well. Issues that take multiple years to get to, that are strategic, that are priorities that the agency is trying to head towards. As much as we have tried to hone and simplify the business plan, there are still a number of efforts, a number of strategic actions in there. And so these priorities help us focus in on those that are most important and need the most focus. I won't read all the words up here. I'll just briefly step through these. Enhancing the customer experience and providing access to those transportation choices. Increasing the share of trips in the region on transit and in other ways that reduce impacts on the community. Reducing customer travel times to attract more riders and make those trips more comfortable. To help counter global climate change and reduce carbon emissions. And to support regional transportation and the regional transportation plan. To improve safety and security. To optimize our internal systems and processes, that is, work smart with smarter tools. to improve fare box recovery, which talks about both costs as well as fares, and look for the best return on TriMet assets. These are public assets. We need to make them work for public good. Improve the state of good repair to make sure that we don't have services that people can't rely on, and to continue to do everything we can to be basically A students with FTA. There are opportunities to fund needed improvements on both the rail and bus side, and by being a highly rated, both from FTA and from third party, we can pursue those funding relationships. The points of emphasis is for the year. Now, some of these are reflections of the strategic priorities, which makes sense. If it's a long-term priority, it's also a short-term priority. Some of these are specific to the year, but you can see these here, including mobility and partnering to provide that mobility, increasing ridership, travel times, public engagement, and down near the bottom, delivering on those HB 2017 funded services, capital projects, and the low-income fare. I'm happy to say, if you page through the details of the business plan, the actual individual objectives and the key strategic actions, you will see progress being made. And that is the purpose of this effort, not only once a year, but literally every month. I come back to the executive team and report on how we're doing on these various efforts to make sure that we're keeping focus on what we need to work on. We have a series of measures and targets, and I'm happy to say that 14, and I think this number is actually, since I did this presentation, may have grown to 15, but 14 at least measures have improved, not just like have gotten slightly better, but have actually shifted from that downward red arrow to a yellow box, or have shifted from a yellow box to an upward green arrow. So substantial improvements on 14 of those measures. Only one measure has gotten worse, West on time. There are some detailed reasons for that. I'm happy to say the short-term trend is good, and in January they had excellent 99.9%. And of the many key strategic actions, 15 of them are completed. The ones that were identified in last year's plan, 15 are now complete. That doesn't mean we should add 15 new ones for this year. It means that we are making progress, and we need to add the ones that we truly need to make progress on those measures and targets. We've already mentioned the discussion at TIAC, and I think I will be at the next TIAC meeting. I know I will be at the next CAT meeting to make sure we present that. This is available to the general public. I just got the email that says it's up on our website. And we are also doing external review and internal review. The external review going to community organizations and having discussions about the business plan, about the vision, mission, values, and about service plan and other efforts that are going on in the region. So that comment period will be open basically through the end of March, and then we'll be consolidating those into the final business plan. So as I just mentioned, the comment period from now through the end of March, planning to bring back the final business plan to you for FY 2020 at your April meeting at the end of April. We will continue, obviously, tracking those strategic priorities and tracking how we're doing in terms of the measures and targets, and then look to an annual update as we go forward. With that, I'll stop and see if there are any questions.
Questions by the board?
I do have a question. Alan, thank you for your presentation and giving us a really great overview of where we're at with developing of the business plan. I think my question, still as a new board member, my first year on the board, is how are we also using the board adopted budget to mirror the priorities and the strategies, the points of emphasis? Because I feel like as a board member, it's great to have, here's our mission, here's our vision, increased, safety, better transparency in decision-making, better public engagement. But ultimately, we also have to approve a budget that, as a board member, for me, I hope that, whatever we decide as a business plan that we adopt that also reflects the dollars, right, that we're trying to invest in our agency. So
Absolutely.
can you talk a little bit about how those two go hand in hand, or what the timing piece will look like?
Certainly. And this year especially, we moved the business plan earlier so that the draft is out and the executive team has gone through it and kind of beaten it up and made sure it makes sense, so that is in advance of the budget cycle. The idea is that we develop this early enough so that we are talking about our priorities. We are also obviously working on the budget, developing the budget at the same time, and they're informing each other.
Okay.
The points of emphasis will be reflected in the budget as well, and so those decisions are part and parcel to these discussions as well.
If I could just add to this, and it's a great question you're asking. I think if we go back in time, historically, TriMet would post the budget on the website. And so what we did last year for the first time is we actually held open houses on the budget process. So we had 4 of them. We said, and University of Oregon here was one of them. And we had staff there. They had great attendance. The people came out and asked questions, gave feedback, what they thought the priorities were, more amenities, more safety, all those trade-offs that come with the choices. So we've also included a more consultative approach rather than a posting approach to the budget process. So I think that helps us as well, that this will culminate in it coming to you of the recommendation of the board that supports the strategies of what you see in the business plan. So they do and need to go hand in glove. But there was a public consultation piece that was new for the agency this year.
So we are also, obviously, as a board, we're also, working on the budget development piece. And so by the time that this plan gets finalized in April, then we as the board will also have the budget for the next couple of years, and hopefully that will reflect some of the things that are emphasized here. Is that?
That's exactly right, except that the budget is only for 1 year.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So
But everything else
we will
you
be
said,
approving
yes.
an annual budget, but this will be a 4 or 5 year larger strategic plan.
That's the exact intent, and that's why we put this just a little bit ahead so we can think about this before we have the draft budget in front of you.
Okay. And then do we also plan multi-year for our budgets? Because for me, it sort of makes sense to also plan in multiple years and not just year by year if our strategic plan is also multi-year.
So we have what will come to this board, the process of the annualized budget process that we've just spoken about. We also have modeling, if you will, for many years out. Like capital goes out a lot of years because we're dealing in sometimes 20-year type of mindset. So typically the closer you get, the more precise it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have modeling based on the strategies there that we fit into it, but the year in question is the one that's actually for the approval. So, but we have all kinds of tracking for capital and operating that we anticipate to manage the business obligations going forward.
Great, thank you. I think my last comment is I think I've seen, a couple of times where, again, still new on the board, so I don't have a lot of history yet, where, we have said, okay, this much set aside for Southwest Corridor, it may be in our proposed budget or current budget, and yet they're still like, we need more money, in order to fully fund this because of XYZ reason. So that is why I wanted to bring that up. It seems like it's, I don't know if it's a common thing in transportation, but I just feel like as a board member, it's, I want to be as precise as possible, right? In terms of how much are we really budgeting for very big projects? And also, if we do that, what does that take away, right, from our either community engagement or public safety or other areas that also need better funding?
Correct, and there's also an immense amount of ask internally. I'm actually going through it right now of all the requests, and some of those are going to be distilled out before it even gets to you for the year in question, let alone the longer term ones. Mm-hmm. So you're right, there's an immense amount of desire for all kinds of projects. We have to make sure we execute to the business plan on those types of commitments as a priority, i.e. safety, security, things of that nature. So we can share with you, I think in large capital environments like this, a lot of times because of our partnerships, what we think is a project to go forward, sometimes it's very much tied to the complexities of the other's plane. And sometimes so you put what we believe our contribution is going to be to it. If it doesn't materialize, then it may get pushed off another year. So these things can be, some can be fairly hardwired on our ability to execute. Other ones, even in the year in question, may get pushed off because of other dynamics that are going on, that we can't get permitting in time or whatever the topic is. So there's a fluidity to it in addition to a rigidity to the execution. So it depends on the topic because of the complexity of an agency such as this.
I just point out that's a really good, your question is right on. I mean, the budget is what drives everything we do in terms of the work, and I would say let's make sure you're asking all the questions and get, because this, a lot of us have been involved in transportation for years, and I think understanding our budget in terms of what's, operational and what based on continual resources versus one time for some of these projects, and some of the limits that can be used or they're placed on some of those funds we get for our projects. Where, I mean, one of the things I hear a lot is this: people say if we just didn't build light rail, we could put a lot more into service, and that's not the case, because we get new monies that are dedicated to that project, can only be spent on that project, an example. So those are the nuances and kind of things that I think are really important to understand in our budget. And I think as we get into the budget dialogue, please ask all those questions, and let's get everybody on the same page on all this. And then I think the other thing you're pointing out is, I mean, we are continually planning for the future in terms of expansions of service and growth of service and investments. And I believe they need to be entirely consistent with what we're putting forward here. So I'm looking for that crosswalk as we have a dialogue about the budget, of how this actually fits into the overall budget and where those resources are going. I think that'd be good for everybody to understand. So again, I just wanted to, again, reiterate, I think those are, your questions are really good, so don't stop. All right?
I'll keep asking.
All right, good. I appreciate that. I just want to say, unless, is there others that have some comments? Because I don't want to.
Thank you.
I guess I would just say that I really like the vision and mission that you folks have laid out here in terms of the delivering convenient, sustainable, integrated mobility options as the vision, and the other as a mission is connecting people with those mobility options. I think that's really important, and I like this is where we need to be in the future, I think, in terms of how transportation is viewed. I did mention to Doug, I didn't see parking on this integration. I think one of the things I'm seeing in some of the other big metro areas is that connection with how we could use, for example, our hop card as a vehicle for parking in some of the places downtown, as just a seamless integration of things. Just to think about that, and that involves a lot of stuff, but I'd like to see that put into that dialogue as you move forward. And then I had one question on the strategic priorities, where you say reduce customer travel times, which I understand, but you put a qualifier, it said significantly. And I was wondering if why you put that in, or what that means to you in terms of reducing travel time. I mean,
to do so significantly means both across the system, so not just in one place, but in a number of places, but also do it at a point where, a second on a single line is not significant. Minutes add up because there are hundreds or even thousands of people traveling through that point, and they are all gaining that. And so that is a significant benefit to the customer. The point of having that word in there, I think, is a goad to us as staff to make sure that we are pushing our partners at the City of Portland to help us move our buses faster, pushing ourselves to understand how we might be able to reduce travel time on MAX.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, I might just add on to here. So if we look at the region, say from a satellite at night, you see a bunch of lights. You just don't see cities and counties, and it's all a lot of people. And if we look at Clark County included, in the next 20 years, there are going to be 3 million people estimated by Metro's analysis and others. That's a lot of growth. So as we look at the region that we're going to become, we have to look at part of a competitive city. As we look at Seattle, where Boeing literally moved some of its head office to Chicago. We have to remain vibrant and healthy, and we look at other cities in the world, the Copenhagens, Singapores, and others. interesting thing for me is there's not one city in the United States that's in the top 25 most livable places ranked. This is a very, a moonshot a bit for us to become the United States beacon and to be a thought leader in this region. So to crack that 25 is not easy, and that includes a lot of elements that others measure globally. And so it really stretches us, as Director Stovall we'd raised back in November, and made us really reflect on what is that moonshot for us. And so cracking the 25 is a big, big step. So as we engage in ballot measures and things of that nature to come, for TriMet to really be a thought leader, and part of that also, if we look at other cities, it's having rapid transit, not just having transit. Because competitive cities move their system quickly so people can rely on getting where they want to go with high reliability. If not, they're subsidizing us in their time. And we have to meet our mark because we're the ones who actually publish the schedule. And so they should be able to rely on us. And so these micro steps are part of a very broad piece of strategy to position us as, boy, do I love living in Portland, and this is one of the greatest places in the world to live. So this is all part of that broader mindset.
Director Gonzalez, you had a comment?
Thank you. Thank you, Director Warner. And I simply wanted to add, it seems apropos at this time, in light of the conversations we've had both in TIAC and several other community organizations, I've benefited from being able to sit in as TriMet staff presents the mission, vision, values, and has a chance to hear from the community. There was a consistent message, and in light of what you bring up, Director Kelsey, there's a fantastic theme coming out that I wanted to share for the benefit of the board and the public. And as much as I really value the moonshot and really putting that stake in the ground that what we're aiming for is greatness as a region, the consistent message I hear from the community is that they also want to feel like they are part of that dream. And the themes I've heard several times in a couple of different approaches has been that if we are going to be the top 25 in the world by global standards, we want to make sure that we're also in that top tier by our own regional standards, and that the people that are here today feel like that vision includes them and feels that it's part of them as well. So I frankly look forward to having the opportunity, and I know that our staff was there and is bringing that feedback back to the agency, but I look forward for seeing that feedback coming through the language as we start really polishing it. I think we all want to shoot for greatness, but we want to make sure we're there too.
Good comments. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Another question.
Oh, sorry. Another.
Just on the business plan. It just occurred to me that we have the 2020 census coming up. And so my question is just around how are we going to incorporate the new census data that comes out around demographics and population changes and households in the Portland area. So just a question on how are we going to include census data into our business plan?
I can speak to that somewhat, and then it may be that somebody else wants to chime in. We do not rely exclusively on the decennial census. We're using the ACS, so we are getting more updated data. We're not just relying on 2010 data for today.
Can you explain ACS for folks in the audience?
Sure. I can't remember what it stands for. American Community Survey, I think.
Yeah.
Which is an annual smaller survey that they use a running average across several years to be able to get a better, it's not as good as the decennial census, the once every 10 years, but it's a better picture of what the community looks like now versus 5 or 10 years ago. It typically takes something like 2 years for the data to come out, so I would assume that our first ability to really use that decennial census will be more in the 2022 range.
Okay, thank you. And again, that just goes back because with this business plan, it's for the next several years of our organization. So as a board, and as an agency, we are basically shaping what the next 4 to 5 years of this agency will look like. So it just made sense to me to also look at the census data, the ACS survey, as well as other data sources where community feels like they're getting involved in the process of shaping this plan. So
great.
Good. Thank you. Anything else? Oh, yes.
I think it helps to understand that even though the business plan is for a number of years, it's looked at every year, and changes are made in some of the subsequent years based on things that are happening in the region that were unknown at the time that the multi-year plan was put together. So it's not that it's locked in stone for those 4 years.
Absolutely. A great example is we published the very first one, and then a month later, HB 2017 was passed, and that dramatically shifted things. So in the next update, we had to incorporate a whole range of additional efforts.
And another one as example to build on is just the board's approval of moving out of distillates into a electric strategy for a bus fleet. So those are significant game changers that we factor into a changing environment. So great point you raise. Thank you.
All right.
Ellen, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
The last item I had for the board was really around an example, if you'll indulge me for a sec, to recognize some of our employees. We've talked about our customers this morning. We've talked about the strategy. Don't ever want to lose sight of some of the work that our employees do. And we have some amazing employees, as you know, in this organization. This week, TriMet received a letter from the Oregon Food Bank recognizing some of our employees for their generosity and years of support, not just a year. For example, since 2011, our TriMet employees, volunteer-wise, raised nearly 6,800 pounds of food and more than $4,400 in cash donations. They did it on their own time. Since 2015, on their own time, they've contributed volunteer totaling four work weeks that people have contributed. So you'll see the letter in your package, but I did want to call them out because this is just one example where, you know, as a public service provider, it often gets forgotten the many things that our approximately 3,000 employees give back into the community. So I just think they deserve a lot of credit. So thank you, and that would conclude my update for this morning.
Any other questions for the general manager? Seeing none then, thank you very much. Let's move on then to the next item on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. For those of you in the audience, everybody watching this, the items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and can be approved by a single motion. Usually there's a number of items. We only have one item on our consent agenda today, which is approval of the board meeting minutes for January 23rd, 2019. So I guess I would see if the board is ready to offer a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any questions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain because I wasn't present.
All right, thank you very much. The motion is approved. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to our resolutions. The first resolution is Resolution 19. It says 2019, right? Resolution 19-02-08, which is approving the 2019 to 2021 biennium Special Transportation Fund. We call it STF Formula Statewide Transportation Fund Improvement Fund, which is STIF, formula and disbursement of federal 5310 funds for seniors and persons with disabilities, and authorizing agreements with transportation providers. Mr. General Manager.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, so as you indicated, the resolution seeks approval of funding for these services for seniors and people with disabilities in our three-county region for the period of 2019 through 21, the biennium. As you've indicated, the state did designate TriMet as the agency responsible for allocating this STF, for Special Transportation Formula funding, and the statewide improvement STIF funds. I know it's a bit of a tongue twister. Where TriMet is also the federally designated agency to distribute these 5310 funds. The funding goes to a wide range of transportation services, includes TriMet, our TriMet Lyft, Wilsonville Smart, Ride Connection, who does a great service for us also, a number of small city transit agencies and community organizations that provide critical service to the seniors and those with disabilities. Our responsibilities is to take the applications from the transportation providers, evaluate them, and then develop a disbursement plan under the advisement of this Special Transportation Formula Advisory Committee. This committee also has advised TriMet to allocate $1 million annually of the STIF funds for transportation services benefiting the seniors and those with disabilities. The amount for this 19 through 21 biennium period through the STIF formula that is available is 8.58, I'm going to call it $8.6 million. The total amount of STIF funds available is about $2.5 million, and the total amount of the federal Section 5310 funding available is $7.5 million. So, as I think some of you are aware, TriMet really acts as the pass-through agency for these funds. In addition to the funding LIFT, the funds also go to services that otherwise would have to be met by LIFT. They provide for really substantial improvements in our services for the seniors and those with disabilities. And Mr. Board President, the recommendation is before you. And I don't know if Bernie wants to come up. If Bernie's, unless there's questions.
Yeah. So let's see. Does the board have any questions on this agenda item or comments? I don't see any. I think it's a good agenda item. There's a lot of beneficiaries. Based on that, then, is there a motion to approve Resolution 19-02-08?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing then, all those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 19-02-08, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to the next resolution, which is 19-02-09, which is authorizing a modification to the contract with Cushman & Wakefield of Oregon, Inc. for real estate/broker services. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you very much. So this resolution requests the board authorize the modification to Cushman & Wakefield's real estate and broker services agreement. Among some of their other responsibilities, Cushman & Wakefield, they help TriMet sell excess parcels of land for transit-oriented development. 3 of the 4 properties listed by Cushman & Wakefield currently under contract with developers. They'll soon begin construction of TOD or transit-oriented developments near these light rail stations. These types of developments, they boost the ridership, bring revenue to the agency, and where TOD can be put in place also helps reduce GHG, so people are living close to transit. TriMet is expecting to bring in $12.5 million in revenue for these 3 sales. It would result in a commission of about $560,000 for Cushman & Wakefield. This resolution before you today authorizes TriMet to increase the contract amount from $500,000 to $825,000 to compensate Cushman for these 3 sales. As authorized in the previous modification, the contract covers Cushman & Wakefield's roughly $250,000 commission for the role in securing that what's been before you before is the fundamental Columbia bus-based site, which is moving to our control right now under eminent domain. Your approval is recommended, and maybe I'll see if Lance Urge is in the audience, wants to come up to answer any technical questions you might have. Okay, thanks.
Questions by the board?
I have a question.
Please.
On number 7 in our board packet, it says under financial budget impact, individual property listings will be approved by TriMet, and the broker's commission will generally be paid at the closing of the transaction out of the proceeds of the property sale. So can you explain the description of the individual properties and what that will entail? So, meaning, is there going to be some housing units that are, going to be built with the developer? Is it just an office building?
Sure, so you can see 2 attachments to the resolution for 2 particular sites that are mentioned in the resolution. So the first attachment is 18th and Salmon across from Providence Park, and that is an apartment building with ground floor commercial retail. And the second one is 17th and Pershing, kind of close to the TriMet Center Street operations headquarters, which is housing. So those 2 particular sites are both mostly housing. The third site listed in here is Southwest Moody site, which eventually is likely to be housing as well. When TriMet's listing these properties, what we've done is we've put requirements on the developers to develop in a way that's transit-oriented and dense. So not necessarily precluding office space or commercial, but typically it's probably likely to be residential or mixed use.
And for housing, is it just left up to the developer to decide, you know, I'm going to charge this amount of rent for the tenants that I want, or can we have some control as a board to say X amount of units has to go to folks who are, you know, below the poverty line?
Right, we've done both. These particular sales, we're relying on the city's inclusionary zoning requirements to deal with the affordability component.
Okay.
But we have several other property transactions that aren't listed in this resolution that are specifically required to be affordable housing. One that recently closed, though Cushman & Wakefield didn't do the brokerage services on it, is the Argyle site on Interstate. That was sold to Reach. That's going to be completely affordable housing, 100%. So we have a couple other sites, a couple other transactions in process that are also going to be affordable housing. So we do both.
Okay.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Lance, I think right now in TriMet's portfolio of real estate, often we forget that we have some substantial real estate holdings in places like this to leverage conversations just like this. I think we have about 540 units right now in total that we are putting into the marketplace that help address that exact issue.
Great.
So a substantial contributor to the region's benefit.
I think you gave me, because I gave a presentation at a group about some of the things we're doing to help out with affordable housing and development. You might want to pass that on to the board. I think it's pretty amazing when you look at what we've been able to do in terms of leveraging our properties and encouraging affordable housing. It's
Thank you.
quite good, and I don't think anybody realizes it except for us and the people we contract with. So I think we need to toot our horn a little bit on this one.
Right, happy to do that.
And I might comment, even though we're talking about this Cushman & Wakefield transaction here, but part of some organizational changes the board's aware of made late last calendar year is also to look at transit-oriented development in a lot more aggressive way. And not what you see here is 3- and 4-story field. We need to go up, way up, and work with our municipal partners in zoning, because when you go up, where the private sector and the real estate, they have to make money, otherwise they won't invest. And out of it, we can, by going up, there's more opportunity to exact even more than I believe what we do today. So you're going to see even more conversation on this rather than 3 and 4 stories. I think the higher you go, there's more to share, and that all boats will rise typically if the model's viable on a per site basis. That's really crucial. So.
Right, and just to point out, the 18th and Salmon development is 8 stories of apartment. I mean, it's in a central location, and so it's a pretty intense development.
Sorry, is there anyone else who wants? I just feel like I'm just taking over the.
Oh, don't keep going.
I think it's great that we are, that we have a lot of control over the, various properties in our area, and that we have good relationships with, developers. But I also am a bit concerned that we might also be pricing folks out who may not be able to necessarily afford these, brand new apartments or condos or whatever that that they're trying to develop. So I just want to make a comment that I think as an agency that is, doing a lot of property development and having a lot of these relationships, that we can also be mindful of the community impact, right, in that area that could create in displacing folks that have lived there for decades or generations, because that's sort of unfortunately been the history of transit-oriented development.
Point well taken, yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to the comment, a yes and for Director Y, in that we as an agency, as we're moving to more deliberate transit-oriented development type of conversations, and we're bringing those partners to the table, I think this is a really good time to bring our City of Portland as a partner to really dig into the inclusionary zoning policies, because if we're leaning on them, frankly, we want to make sure that they're performing the way that we anticipate them to, that the outcomes are actually yielding the results we want, because those are policies that have been in place for a while, and yet, yes, we do still hear the outcomes not always taking us where we want to. So I think as we move into these conversations as an active partner for very, I think, effective instrumental projects of transit-oriented development, that the City of Portland steps in as an agency that's willing to look at their current policies. So I would encourage us to really roll our sleeves up and look at that with them.
Yeah, I might add, I think that's an excellent point. I would just suggest that we, not just the City of Portland, we need to look at this on a regional basis. All municipalities where we have real estate, and I won't get into details, we're into discussions right now with one where we actually own a piece of real estate, and some people have put a concept forward to us, and we said, well, maybe not so much. And so how do we factor in some of those elements that maybe historically weren't the case? We would typically just transact the real estate rather than challenge and question how do we do it in a slightly different way. So I think you are raising a really important part of a regional conversation that that needs to, I think there's great opportunity in there.
I think so. And as we kind of launch this first iteration of TOD type of projects, the time is right to set the tone.
If I could say one more thing about that, the Argyle site on Interstate, the Portland Housing Bureau was a very important partner on that. They substantially subsidized that project, enabling REACH to do what they're doing there, which is approximately 200 affordable units. So they just broke ground on that the other day, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Director Stovall.
Thank you. As everybody knows, I'm a huge fan of transit-oriented development. I live in a TOD location, have for quite some time, and I absolutely love it. I love the positive impact it has on the community and our ability to leverage the great investment we've made in our transit system. Just really quick, Lance, as I look through this resolution, I just want to make sure I'm doing my math correctly. It does say that in no event does the commission exceed 5%. And if I do the calculation here, it appears that their commission is right around just above 2% when you include all the properties that we're referencing here at $825,000 in comparison to $37,300,000. That's about a 2.2% commission.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers exact in front of me, the exact breakdowns of the commission percentages, but obviously as the transaction amount is higher, the commission is lower. So that sounds about right. I believe for the 25-ish million for the bus-based site, it was around 2%.
Yeah. So, actually, I think that was closer to 1%.
1%. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, 1%.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean, at 2.2% from a commission basis, that's very reasonable. And as you said, as the property values go up higher, then the percentages come down. Usually, you're somewhere in the 4 to 5% when you're dealing with commercial real estate. So, to see it at 2.2. That's very reasonable. I think it represents the relationship we have here and the RFP process to get to where we are. So thank you. Good work there.
Thank you.
Other questions? Other comments? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Well, it's all right. I'm going to get up here so I can remember the number of the. So I have a motion and a second to approve resolution 19-02-09. Is there any further discussion? Questions? All those then in favor of the motion to approve resolution 19-02-09, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. And Lance, before you leave, I mean, I think it feels like some people think we're just getting into transit-oriented development. We've been doing this for many, many, many years. And I think the stuff that you gave me was just talking about some of the properties where we have 540 affordable housing units going on, and in just this, with properties we were talking about disposing of now. If you've got a complete inventory, I mean, I go all the way back to like the Station Place around when the West Side was built. Right near the Civic State. I mean, we have done some amazing projects and partnered with local governments and housing authorities to actually make significant amount of units. So if you have an easy way to put that together, I think it's really worthwhile for the board to understand the history because there's been a lot of work done, and I think TriMet has been a leader in terms of encouraging affordable housing along our light rail and other transit corridors.
That's an excellent point. I will commit to do that. And what I might suggest is we do past, present, and future.
That's
because I think you look at the Orencos of the world are just great examples of TriMet's catalytic involvement. They really should be applauded. And we look at where we think we want to go, it gets in some of the conversation we just had here. So we'll undertake to bring that back for a future briefing.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Lance. We appreciate your work. All right, let's move on then. Resolution 19-02-10, which is authorizing a contract modification with Innovations in Technology, Inc. in it for LIFT Program Module Data Terminal.
You said that
just,
well.
just wanted to see if I can pronounce these right. We call them MDTs, I found out reading the staff report, and Data Communication Systems. Mr. General Manager, do you have somebody here? Or is
I
that
do.
you?
A.J. O'Connor
Okay.
does great work for us in the IT department. The resolution before you is a modification within it to upgrade some of the technology for our Lyft paratransit service. The board authorized the contract within it in 2010 following a competitive RFP process. It itself allowed for the installation of communication technology to become really the foundation under the new FCC requirements. That technology that you referred to as mobile data terminal improved and supported the communication between Lyft, our central dispatch, and our Lyft vehicle operators. It uses a GPS, wireless LAN, and other software. It talks about, produces electronic manifests, time scheduling, updating, street level navigation, has a lot of additional valuable features for the operating teams, if you will. By the end of the year, Verizon, our current wireless provider, they're going to retire the 3G code division access network. So we're in a period of transition here. So as a result, we're going to have to upgrade what you have as a recommendation before you to this mobile data terminals to the 4G LTE and replace some of these modems, if you will, that go with it. The hardware and software involved, it's proprietary to Init. So therefore, they're the only firm that can perform this work. The modification increased the 3.4 existing contract by another $588,000. So that's what the funding is captured in our 19 or 20 IT budget, so it's already in there. Bridging back to examples Kathy raised around, gee, what's in the budget? So it captures these types of things to execute our business plans. So your approval overall is recommended for this one, and I'll be way over my skis if you answer heavy technical questions. That's why AJ's here to help.
So we'll do that just to keep you on your toes. Is there questions by the board?
Yeah, a point of clarification. I wasn't clear on whether this resolution is modifying to a total contract value of $588K, or if it's adding.
It's adding that amount to an existing contract to allow them to upgrade the modems.
Thank you.
So,
go ahead.
I'll do this. Sorry. So it's a $500,000 increase, right? A second modification. So I am just worried about these additional, again, increases to our budget. And obviously with technology, it's, things are changing rapidly, and there's, iPhones change, right? Every year there's a new model. So how do we plan for that for the future? Just because again, just back to my concern that it's $500,000 that we, may have budgeted for, but I think it's still
in this case, it's upgrading to a 4G modem, which is the dominant communication path right now. So we would expect at least a decade before Verizon and AT&T and all the other carriers roll out to 5G. In general, how we plan for this is we constantly have to be looking to the future. In IT, unlike a lot of the other areas, the entire way we do business changes every 5 to 8 years. So we're constantly looking ahead. The reason this happened is at the time, about 10 years ago, when we replaced the existing bus dispatch and Lyft dispatch and the radio system is together, we were originally going to do them all together, but Lyft wanted to move to an electronic manifest. So what that means is before they were paper-based, and they wanted to get to electronic manifest as soon as possible for operation efficiencies. So we separated those projects. Lyft went first, And the quickest way to get to the electronic manifest and the operational efficiencies was to go with this 3G modem that was already certified on Verizon's network that was embedded in the PC that's on the lift vehicle. So that decision was made at that time to get the operational efficiencies as quickly as possible. The fixed route side already is on a 4G system that's not embedded in the PC. It's a separate unit that is integrated to it. I don't know if that answered your question.
That's helpful. And is there going to be any additional training required by staff when we're upgrading to this system that we should take into account?
No, it's just the communication path. Really what you're upgrading is allowing the communication path to continue. It will not change for the lift operator or lift dispatch anything.
It's in the back room, if you will, so to speak.
Okay, and so do you feel like as staff, this is your best recommendation for the board to consider? There isn't any other effective
No, we looked, it's the least expensive. We looked at other possibilities like getting an external router and modem similar to the configuration that the fixed route has. But the time frame to go out, procure that, and then pay in it to integrate that to the existing box was much, much more expensive, and we would be really pushing the limit of when they shut off 3G.
Okay, thank you.
I just would add one clarification. I hope I didn't mislead the board. The number is 588,000. I think I heard 500,000. So the incremental on top of the contract, just for clarification, in case I misled you. So,
thank you.
Right.
So.
And one more question. With regards to service, do we anticipate this to have an impact on service, good, bad, or indifferent?
The speeds will probably increase because it's 4G and the coverage is significantly better than 3G. So yes, we probably will see an increase in coverage and speed to the
I suppose I meant more of the customer.
The rider.
The rider.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, there's no difference. There'll be no difference to the rider. It's just, if it's not approved, then literally on December 31st, the lift vehicles will not have data communications to and from, and Lyft will have to revert to a paper manifest, which would really affect the customer in terms of efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Two quick questions. The first is in regards to Director Way's question in regards to, I want to better understand the concept of this also. It doesn't appear that this is some type of contractual modification that we're making to a historical contract in the sense that this is a change order.
Yes.
So this is more so, we've worked with it in the past. We've got a current contract with them. We're expanding what we need them to do now that we need to switch from this 3G to the 4G.
That's correct, and they're the only one that can do it because it's their PC, if you will, that has the modem inside it.
And that's my next question, of course. As I remember, as we were talking about this years ago, we were talking about, and we got the whole presentation on going within it. There were concerns at that point in time about the possibilities of going with a proprietary system and how that locks us in for the future, potentially into situations where now we're looking at something where they're the only provider who can deliver the service to us. And we went through that. Board was comfortable. I'm still comfortable with the choice. The only question I have is in regards to when we were looking at things like this, where we have a sole source situation where we really don't have any external opportunities to go to because they're the only ones that can provide the service. We usually like to share the kind of our independent internal estimate of the cost, and we don't see that at this point. So is this pricing? And it's a little tricky because one is proprietary, but the modems aren't. I mean, we're dealing with modems that we know what that should look like and what that should cost. So are these costs in alignment with what we independently have determined?
Yes, the modems is just it's a standard modem that's a 4G modem that they've already certified on the Verizon network. The reason we didn't, frankly, do a cost estimate, if we were going to replace in it, we're talking millions and millions of dollars.
Correct.
And we would not, in no way could we meet the time frame when Verizon shuts down. So we could certainly go back and do that, but we felt it was sort of self-evident that.
And that was essentially my estimation. I mean, for myself and I think we were the only two that are on the board. Then we got that benefit of understanding, that whole piece of it years ago. It's just now as we read this resolution, independent of that historical conversation and discussion and approval that we did historically, it was beneficial to hear, I think, the fact that of what has led us to this, and that this is a very reasonable cost in regards to doing this upgrade as required, and the time frame and the cost and all those things. So again, both Bruce and I have had the opportunity. We were there back then.
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
No comments.
Is our board member would like to offer a motion to approve resolution dash 2010, and I hear a motion down here. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none then. All those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 19-02-10, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. And I would point out, Director Way, this is a great example of when we get into our budget, you can ask lots of questions about what's in our IT budget and some of the projects that are coming up the next year, so that we understand that fully when we get to this point. And I realize you weren't there when we made those decisions, but this is coming up the next few months is when we really need to make sure that we recognize the trade-offs and the monies that are being spent for various projects. So thank you. All right, what I'm hearing is we maybe need a little break here. So why don't we take how about a 7-minute break? That sound long enough? Okay.
Perfect.
I do want to get on the road. I want to drive as much as I can. Well, I'm not going to go that far today, but this afternoon is probably okay. Tomorrow morning, I think we're going to try to get down to Ashland or Medford tonight. Well, I'm not taking it for, because just imagine going down for a month and that. All right, are we ready to go?
I think he wants us to go to third base.
All right, let's move on now to Resolution 19-02-11, which is authorizing a contract modification with ADS System Safety Consulting LLC for safety management system consulting services. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you very much. So this resolution's to really deal with what we call our SMS, our safety management system. That's not unique to TriMet. It's part of really a national standard of ensuring we have top safety practices. So it is a system that's required by the FDA overall and does very much underpins our core value of safety within TriMet. It ensures also that TriMet has the necessary structure, the resources, the expertise, the staffing, and training in place to align the safety priorities and strategies and promote the safety continuous improvements that need to continue to manifest themselves. TriMet had issued an RFP for the contract with the intention of making multiple awards and allocating the work through a competitive, basically a task order process. In late 2016, we awarded contracts to 4 firms, including ADS. Each 5-year contract was valued at just under $610,000 for a total of $2.43 million. In the 2 years since the executing of the contract, ADS has won more than its fair share of the task orders for the work. Now, ADS is proven to be the highest qualified firm as now that we're into this, and has the most experience and the lowest hourly rates. And we continue to be relying on them and others for the SMS consulting services. This resolution specifically seeks to increase the contract amount for ADS from $610,000 to $875,000. It doesn't affect the total value of the 4 contracts, as the expenditure rates for the other 3 companies were actually well below the maximum amounts. So when the contract was awarded, ADS workforce was 23% female and 54% minority. ADS, they are, just a reminder, a federally certified DBE firm, and the company intends to perform most of the work. Its subcontractors, DBE subcontractors, could increase that capacity, possibly also if needed. So Marla's here to answer any questions and the recommendations before you.
Questions by the board for staff? Yes.
I do have a question. This safety management work seems very specialized. Is this consulting kind of unique to the transit business?
Yes, it is. It's really specialized. It's a new mandate that's being rolled out. It's a requirement of the agency. So while all these 4 firms before you are very highly qualified, ADS is definitely showing the highest skill set, and also they're most experienced in this area. This is new to transit period. The only other industry that has had SMS involved before is the aviation industry. So we are all, as transit operators across the nation, trying to figure this all out, and so hence the need to have a highly qualified contractor.
And is ADS local, or do they have local operations?
They are not local, but they do have partners that come in and help support us locally, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? I had a question. Did the FTA, help us out in the funding of any of this?
No, not right now. There is no. This is kind of one of those wonderful unfunded mandates that have come before us. And while they give us a lot of technical support and direction in this, to do the heavy lifting is required by the agencies.
I guess the only other question is how many other people are at this point or completed this and around the United States?
So I'm proud to say that TriMet is leading the nation in this initiative.
Good and bad. Good. All right.
A blessing and a curse.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're getting a lot of requests for help from other agencies, so we're kind of all plugging through together. But the really important part of this is really moving us to the next stage. We've done all of our planning and development. Now we're really trying to build out what the implementation is and how to change the culture of safety for the organization. So it's really critical that we start moving forward on this planning initiative right now.
Other questions, comments? I think I've got mine out. Thank you very much. And thanks for doing this because safety is one of our highest priorities. So this is good.
Thank you.
Is a member of the board ready to offer a motion to approve resolution 19-02-11?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this resolution? Hearing none then, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution 19-02-11, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. And
Thank you.
look forward to seeing this as it moves forward. Thanks. All right, let's move on to resolution 19-02-12 of the TriMet, Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, authorizing a contract with Complete Coach Works, CCW, for on-site bus fleet maintenance and repair services. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So this is necessary so TriMet, we can meet our preventative maintenance requirements and schedule, particularly considering the staffing levels and the shortfall that we've got in many of our mechanics as we expand so rapidly. TriMet currently is 48 positions short in our overall, to meet our overall responsibilities, which is substantial. So part of this is because of historic, but particularly because of the expansion, as I've just indicated, for the bus service. And this is particularly deal with a high level of also retirements that have been going on by our journey level maintenance workers. So these positions will be replenished with TriMet service workers who complete a 2-year maintenance apprenticeship program as part of it. And we anticipate being back up to staff with a fully trained team probably by the end of 2021 is our target, because it does take time to get people through the pipeline to be certified and qualified. This proposed contract with Complete Coach Works, it's intended to be for a 3-year term and not to exceed the amount of just over $2 million or $2,025,000. It will be counted as part of the Maintenance Assist Fund, or we call MAF. It's provided and it's outlined in the TriMet and ATU working wage agreement. So it's acknowledged and will go towards that amount that we have allowable. And it will allow us to pay for limited amounts of additional maintenance work performed by these independent contractors. So the bus fleet inspections, the preventative maintenance, it's budgeted in our FY19 bus operating budget. And now Coachworks is not a certified firm, but its workforce is nearly 64% minority and 14% female. The overall recommendations before you. And I just want to introduce Ed Bennett, who does a great job running the bus fleet as our director, and Roland Hoskins, of course, is our executive director and doing a great job as well. So,
questions for Doug or the staff?
I've got a question, and this is with regards to the fact that we are also in the midst of the beginnings of a transition to electrification. So we're adapting a fleet. Does this contract include the fleet vehicles that we're bringing in as part of that transition as well, or are we going to be looking at a separate maintenance agreement for those fleets?
So, go ahead, Ed.
Complete Coach Works actually builds a full electric bus, and they are going to be able to help us transition into electrification as well. So with having this contract intact, On these first 5 electric buses that go into service, all the maintenance will be done under warranty by New Flyer Industries. After that first year, then we'll have to have somebody that's certified to work on high voltage, help us lead the way, to transition us through that, and they are certified high voltage inspectors. So it'll kind of go hand in hand with the diesels and transitioning to the electric.
That's good to hear. Is that scope included then under this contract, or are we looking at potential changes for being able to have certified individuals to service these new vehicles?
Well, the way the scope of work was written was, just strictly based on preventive maintenance. So each of those electric buses do have preventive maintenance cycles, outlined by the manufacturer. So at this time right now, we were just going to go ahead and, just kind of mix them into the fleet.
Fantastic.
And use it under one contract.
Thank you. Good to know. And while we're on the subject, then it sounds like there's, with this other vehicle type, there might be a need for retraining staff or obtaining certifications on staff. So there will be some needs internally for staff adapting. Do you foresee it changing staff, or how that might impact the folks that are currently serving under this contract?
So perhaps I can jump in on this one. So
I appreciate
one of the areas that I see that you'll see coming forward in the budget for next year was also part of the reorganization, was for TriMet to get a better handle and actually develop a strategic plan for, I'll call it operational training, including exact issues like this. So Mark Matsui and I have even had conversations around PCC. Is there ways to, how do we transition in the learning side of our operating platform as we get into electrification and other technologies that are coming down? Because our vehicles aren't just physical vehicles of transmissions anymore. They're becoming more and more electronic and almost rolling lands in some regard. So we're going to have to develop new training practices. Electrification is just one part of the new bus. So we have work to do in this. The industry has no training standards because it's all so new. So we're going to be part of that, and that's going to be part of that strategic work over probably the next year plus, that we've got to lay out what that course is going to look like to get there.
So if, in effect, the recipient of this contract will be there along the ride?
They will have to, to the degree that for this piece of work, absolutely we need them now. The degree in helping us develop this training strategy, of which electrification is part of it, to the degree that we contract that out, they'll have to compete for that piece separately.
Okay.
Because I'd say they're not the only person, and we want to encourage competition, and maybe others have experience in other cities that can help us in the bus electrification training programs. So they'll be part of a marketplace when we get to that piece of what it is we actually want to do.
I appreciate that. Yeah, just trying to put context around this.
No, it's
Thank you.
complex. So.
Good questions. Director Bauman?
Yes, thank you. Under point 6 on the report to the board under procurement process, it's indicated that this there was an invitation to bid issued 3 different times. Did you have to make changes to it for that third successful invitation?
So the first time it went out to bid, we didn't really identify, let's just say, minimal to maximum amount of workers that we needed. So when it was awarded the first time, that it was a local company that came in and won the bid. However, they were only able to supply 1 technician, no more, and it just wouldn't have served our needs. So the second time it went out for bid is we didn't really have a clear amount of weeks involved to put a cap on it, and also put a cap on, that we were limited to not going over a certain amount of, weeks and hours, so.
Okay. So in other words, as you became more clear with what the scope of the work was, it warranted then another round?
Correct, because each time it went out, the people that were bidding on it were, coming back asking questions on, on modifications needed.
Right.
So, and then it came down to the last go around. There was two companies, CCW and Cummins, that had submitted a bid.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Is board member ready to offer a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then, all in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 19-02-12, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on then to Resolution 19-02-13, which is authorizing a contract with Siemens Mobility, Inc., Siemens, for Type 2 and 3 SD 660 light rail vehicles, fleet midlife overhaul services. Mr. General Manager, this is an exciting one, I think.
Yes, this is a culmination of an immense amount of work. And just before I cover off some of the commentary, I just really want to acknowledge the team here on the maintenance that went through this. Plus Kevin Yin, who's our Director of Procurement, was extensively involved in this. This is a complex procurement. This fits into a broader strategy. I think that the board, not all board members were present at the time. The negotiation of the last collective agreement with the ATU. This is part of that. And so what you have before you as a recommendation is the response to the marketplace on that. We have, for our Type 2s and 3s, we have 79 vehicles in total that would be looking through to set up a production line to a varying degree of modifying the fleet. We've historically, this agency has only rebuilt components and maybe done a production line on components of a train car, if you will. We're now going to be moving, this is a big step for TriMet, to move to more of a remanufacturing through the midlife rebuild cycle of the life cycle of a car. This is a lot more common in the industry. TriMet has not used this practice before, so big step for us to do this. Very exciting. It does support our strategic business plan. When I also look at midlife rebuilds, a metric that the team knows I use quite extensively, it's called mean distance between failure, or how far do you travel before you go clunk, right? You have a breakdown of some kind. This should help us move the mean distance between failure up. Why is that important? It's for the customer. So our staff can rely on the equipment being more reliable fundamentally. The experience for the customer is better. We also get to modernize some of the things that a rebuild will allow you to do where a single production line of one thing will not capture. We know the work is coming. This is a 7-year agreement that's sitting before you. We are very excited about this. The best and final offer proposal is more than $100 million less than the other finalists. And we can, the team or myself can talk about what we think is the case. I will comment that as part of the competitive process, there is an intent to award, which we issued just over a week ago, and there's 7 days for those who were not being recommended to proceed with this. In this case, Siemens is before you for the recommendation today, and where they can question or challenge a protest, if they will. That 7 days has expired, and there were no protests by the other two. So you should be aware of that information for you. It is covered in our budget process. This is a significant strategic change for us. Doing this internally also would have cost significant capital for this agency because we don't have facilities to actually handle it. So you have to build all kinds of facilities. Years it would take to actually build it, let alone staff it and get it ready. So this fits into a broader strategy overall that was, again, negotiated with the ATU. So the Siemens workforce diversity is 26% female, nearly 30% minority. One comment I will make here is that the first car, I think they're intending to do it out of their Sacramento facility. I'll call the prototype. We'll send a car down there. After that, their intent and plan is to actually create a manufacturing process here in Oregon and the Portland region in some semblance. They'll be working and partnering with others in the region on this. So I would pass that along to you. It's still to come, but sometimes things come up in the marketplace. It's not an absolute, but I think it's an intent. Having been through some of these before, and I think Siemens will work very diligently to make that happen, but it's not an absolute because things do happen. Maybe they can't get mechanics, things of that nature. So now you do have before you also 4 letters that I wanted to make sure that you had been passed along to the board for supporting other candidates. So you have that before you. But as we pull this all together, the recommendation before you can see is a Siemens recommendation to proceed. And we've got a real talented team here to answer any technical questions you may have.
Is there anything you'd like to add before we ask for board questions? Nope, okay. Good questions, go ahead. Director Gonzalez?
Yeah. So why the big delta between price with the other two? Let's start there.
Well, as explained in the memo, we can only speculate, but we believe from looking through the proposals that in large part, Siemens built the vehicles and has a leg up in that sense in understanding what disassembly and reassembly is going to be required given the scope that we put into the RFP. And that basically explains the discrepancy. The 2 other bidders had a larger amount of scope that they estimated in terms of what needed to be done for corrosion repair and that kind of thing.
So otherwise a responsive bid from a bidder that is very familiar with the systems.
Yes, sir.
I might maybe just add on to Chris's comments here, just a couple things from my perspective. Firstly, to have 3 bids such as this, we had a few others that didn't make it. This is really the qualifying shortlist. So there was a healthy marketplace out here. So I think that's important versus it's
good to know.
I think that's quite important.
Yeah.
The second piece was, if one can speculate, that because of this is Siemens equipment, these other individuals such as Alstom and Siemens are going to have to buy many parts to meet the requirements from Siemens themselves. So my guess is they're probably not doing them any favors on the price charging versus their own manufacturing process from an OEM perspective. And also some of them have, one of the 2 has, I think, a manufacturing plant on the East Coast versus one, Alstom, I think, is on LA on the West Coast.
Right.
So there's some transportation costs. They've probably also factored a far higher risk of lack of knowledge of the cars into their pricing. I think those are probably some of the, if I missed anything else from, at least from my perspective.
In addition, Kinky Shario, this would have been their first time doing overhaul on their West Coast facilities, so they would have a big build up to prepare for that.
Oh, sorry, I did miss one thing. In the bidding process, and I think this is a substantial piece of information, is in the bidding process, what we asked for in the specifications, the other 2 bidders, Alstom, Kinkashario, they wanted to do basically their manufacturing rebuild process was a full strip down and rebuild back up process, versus that's not fully what we're requiring in the spec. So Siemens really came back, even with clarifications to the other bidders. I think that is probably a likely substantial piece. So they're a full strip down, rebuild up from ground zero manufacturing process in their business formula, where Siemens has built in and met our spec with a lot more adaptability. A little bit closer to what UTA and Salt Lake City went through, a little bit on similar cars.
And we tried to highlight that after the proposals came in, we did an interview process and then a BAFO. And we tried to highlight the issues we saw there in terms of their tear down process, the extremes that they're going to go to compared to the scope that we were asking for in the RFP.
Thank you. I don't want to leapfrog.
Director Bauman?
Yes, thank you. So the contract term is 7 years. Is the expectation that all of the vehicles will be completely overhauled during that period?
Yes, 79 vehicles.
And this work, of course, will initially be done in Sacramento, but it will all be done at a site outside of TriMet's control. To what extent does TriMet kind of monitor the work that's being done as it's taking place to ensure that it's up to our standards?
There's a quality assurance process that we use, and we'll have an on-site inspector full-time at that facility. We also have they have built into the overall process or gateways and checkpoints where we would review their work before they're allowed to continue.
Okay, thank you.
This is just a comment, a question, and this is for those who are actually watching, and you can comment further if you'd like. But one of the questions I had was, what is entailed in a rebuild, and is it just a mechanical transformation? And what I've been told is no, the interior is going to be completely redone as well, and so it'll look more like a new light rail.
It's an overhaul, not a rebuild. Okay. And in the overhaul, yes, there will be a new paint job, new windows, exterior and interior will be overhauled. The car will come
so
back.
It'll look like a new
yes,
car.
Yes, it'll look new.
The color scheme will match the Type 4s and 5s.
Okay.
So it'll be very similar appearance.
That's great.
Good. Director Stovall?
So, you know, as I listen to all this and a couple of questions that we asked earlier, in regards to the ability to do the work here in Portland, and it's tricky when you're talking about subcontractors and our ability to kind of work cohesively with them, but is there any opportunity for us as an agency to work with them to encourage that work being done here, thus reducing, you know, costs in regards to shipping and encouraging? I mean, there's also some opportunity to just, I mean, those things are heavy, so we've got to put them on a train, we've got to ship them down, ship them back. It'd be incredible if we could, you know, have some type of line extension where we pull into a facility, they refurb them, and we pull them back out. So we don't have to go through all that. I think about that, and there could be some cost savings and could be advantageous for them. I know it'd be tricky as far as workers, but it seems like you could, you know, temporary transit workers easier than sometimes cars of that size. Have we had any conversations in regards to that?
According to SEMA's proposal, they'll do the first 2 pilot vehicles down in Sacramento, and during that 20-month period, they're going to construct the facilities at the old Oregon Iron Works facility, install a paint booth and a couple of other bays. So they'll be able to perform the rest of the 77 overhauls up here. That's in their proposal. I mean, there's, as Doug said, there's possibility that there could be some stumbling blocks to that, but
that's the intent.
That is their intent.
To do the work local.
Having been through this before, there typically are stumbling blocks, but the goal is to take the long-term lens here. But I think to your point, we will have to help support them be successful, not necessarily financially.
Correct.
But in the community, maybe things we can help in the back room on permitting, things of that nature, and part of a successful outcome here. So we have a role in this, I believe.
Well, I'm also thinking longer term. I mean, I don't know how the Oregon Iron Works facility would fit into our strategic future, but you know, I think about an expenditure, capital expenditure, that we could leverage at some point in the future our own selves. On top of this, especially as we're looking at Southwest Corridor and the additional cars we receive there, what type of extensions of our current facilities do we benefit from if we partner more directly, that once, you know, they're done with these 79, you know, that facility could revert to us, since there's always already a capital expenditure potentially that's going out. Again, I don't know all the details around what it would take to accomplish something like that, but you know, I ride past the Ruby Junction facility all the time, and you know, things like that. How do we leverage, you know, the assets we already have to encourage, not only encourage, you know, that investment in here, but also the long-term opportunity to leverage a facility like that, you know, that's already focused on our, you know, Type 3 and Type 4 vehicles.
Yeah, I think you're quite correct, and also what you have before you is 2s and 3s.
2s and 3s.
There's something
yes.
called the 4s and 5s are coming, and then sometime down the road. And once you get into this, the water level of what's needed goes up and down, but it's never going to end.
Correct.
And so there's even though we have a term for what we're buying of 79 cars over 7 years for $105, $106 million, that's coming, let alone a potential future manufacturing side to things, whether it be Southwest Corridor. We also have a number of cars replacing the Type 1s right now. We have an RFP unrelated to this out in the marketplace, so others will be able to look at this, i.e. Siemens, and they're probably on their thought process as well. How do we leverage this marketplace? Not just for refurb, but manufacturing maybe as well.
Correct.
It's great to see. I appreciate what the bid process reveals when a market's so well positioned to deliver us value in this way. So that's wonderful. But I want to talk about the diversity section because I have a question here. We're accustomed to seeing that section for more regionally focused vendors, and so I'm just wondering how to interpret the information we have here for a vendor that has such an international footprint. So when we see the percent of female and the percent minority, I see it's quoted as Siemens having a workforce diversity of 26% female, close to 30% minority. Is that worldwide, or are we talking, is that specific to the Sacramento operations?
I'm not sure. I think that's Sacramento operations, but I'd have to look into that for you.
I'd appreciate just the clarity, and I think it helps, it behooves us on the board. I know that generally when I see these numbers, my interpretation is that we're talking about the regional workforce. So I just want to make sure that at least our vendors and that are responding with information are aware of that. If we see international numbers, that's great, but really seeing the regional workforce is important.
Actually, I'm remembering the format that they laid it out, and it was definitely Sacramento.
Fantastic. Thank you. It's a good thing to clarify. I appreciate that.
All right.
Just a comment. I think that a lot of these projects, what I'm kind of finding here is the gap and shortage of the workforce, right? That's sort of ready to go, ready to, be here in Oregon to really provide the next generation of technology that our transit agency needs. And so taking that into consideration and also referencing to what Director Stovall said earlier, the more that we can develop short-term, long-term goals and plans to really, to do more of the grow your own programs here in Oregon, maybe use, what other states are doing in terms of their technology, but really, building a workforce, right? A labor force that, we have Oregonians, kids straight out of high school or apprenticeship programs, really using these opportunities, I feel like is sort of the direction that I would like to see when we continue to talk about the shortage and, we don't have X amount of workers that are trained in this field or that field. So I sort of see as a recurring theme here, and I hope we can do something about it.
The comment I'd make to this one is we are working with our regional partners, City of Portland, Metro, and others. President Tom Hughes, before Lynn Peterson coming in, we actually participated in how to C2P2 it's referred to as, and how do we leverage some of that talent, not just in the public sector that's coming, but if you look at the announcement of a $2 billion facility for Intel coming, we look at the demands coming, so there's a regional challenge that not one agency can solve, that we are working together to actually invest with labor in some of these exact conversations now. So it's quite a large topic.
All right. How's the board feeling? Are we ready to have a motion to approve a contract with Siemens Mobility?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any further discussions? Seeing a good discussion here, by the way. All those in favor then of the motion to approve resolution 19-02-13, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved unanimously. This is a good piece of work, and I do predict we're going to have a lot of jobs created as a result of these regions.
Again, just a big thank you to the team here and those behind them who helped support them. This is very heady, complex stuff, and we're going through not just doing things ourselves, but doing through third parties now. So that's new muscle for us. So I just really want to thank the three people here in particular. So they've done great work.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Just a second. I realized that each car might need different kinds of rehab. I'm interested in comparing what the cost of a new car is versus the average cost of rehabbing a car?
Well, the cost is about $1 million a vehicle, and a brand-new vehicle is a little over $4 million, I believe.
And see, I think that's helpful for the public to know that we are being prudent in terms of investing in our fleet to rehab it as opposed to just buying new cars.
Yeah, so I would give it a range rather than a dollar rather than $1 million.
Okay.
I'd say, because each car is going to be unique, right?
Well, and that's, I want to kind of.
The range I would focus on, let's call it $1 million to 1.4, 1.5 range, depending on what each car needs. A new car, not uncommon, when you start putting all the overheads in, all the inventory you got to bring in, et cetera, you're probably looking at $4.5 to $5 million for a car.
Yeah.
I'd say it's more than 4.
And we have
Well, more than
26 new cars coming.
Well, actually, we'll have, where you'll see coming to the board, actually, it's about 33 cars, 26 to replace, unrelated to this piece that you just approved, by the way. So I don't want you to go back and not approve it. But the other ones are also for the Fairplex expansion for another 8.
Right.
So.
Good.
Good, thank you.
Well done.
All right, thank you. Moving on then, to Resolution 19-02-14, which is authorizing a contract with Stacy and Whitbeck, Inc. for construction services for the Cleveland Mac Station Operator Brake Facility and Signal and Communications Building.
So I think you've seen the Cleveland station come before you for the couple different parts. One is the communications building and the operator brake facility. They were separate before. They're different pieces of work. This is a real important piece for us. We're going to be replacing the existing signals and communication equipment and restore the platform. The invitation to bid last fall resulted in one bid only. And so after Steve and I had consultation, we basically said, let's go back to the marketplace here, not comfortable. So there's an example where management will go back rather than just take the bid and put it in front of you. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And I think what you have before you is the rebid came in under $550,000 lower on the second round. So just by taking that extra time is an example where you'll see the benefit in front of you today. So outside of that, I'll just say that's the recommendation in front of you, unless Steve has any other comments or you have questions.
Questions or comments for staff? I'm not hearing any, so is there then a motion to approve Resolution 19-02-14?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none then, let's call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 19-02-14, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to, which I believe is our last resolution, which is Resolution 19-02-15, which is authorizing a contract also with Stacy and Whitbeck, Inc. for Blue Line Station Rehabilitation Construction Manager / General Contractor Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As we all, I think most know, the east side Blue Line stations, they've served us for well over 30 years now, and so at some point you have to rebuild them. So we call it Renew the Blue. It's going to take years to do, and we're trying to manage its transition of which ones we do either with other works or based on the affordability and the overall capital portfolio that we do based on affordability. So this has elasticity a bit when we do some rather than do them all at once, because you also need to get people where they need to go while we rebuild this network over time. So what you have before you is the recommendation under this contract of up to 6 MAC stations between East Portland and Gresham would be renovated. So they would include East 102nd, 172nd, 181st, the Ruby Junction 197th, Gresham Central Transit, and Cleveland, which you're, I think, well aware of by now for other reasons. We're anticipating 1 to 2 stations per fiscal year of the contract. Again, that's depending on funding as this competes against all the other challenges we have as we run a state of good repair responsibilities in addition to the expansion of the capital portfolio. So we would look to allocate this based on capital availability and also resources that come with this. At the November meeting, the board approved a resolution authorizing an exemption that allowed TriMet to use the competitive RFP process and select the best qualified contractor. As a reminder, we received 4 proposals, and Stacy and Whitbeck emerged as the highest ranked proposer. In this resolution, we would propose entering into a contract with Stacy and Whitbeck for up to $17.5 million, which would include costs for pre-construction services as well as the construction fee itself embedded in there. The amount for the pre-construction services included already in our FY19 and 20 capital budget, and the construction services as they unfold will be included in later capital programs on an annualized basis till the work is completed for the $17.5 million. Stacy Whitbeck indicated in its proposal we would use a certified contractor for about 15% of the work in the areas of the work and also specific in those numbered areas. We'll work with Stacy Whitbeck to minimize the MWE, SD, VBE opportunities as the construction is specifically negotiated. Your approval's recommended for this resolution, and any comments, Steve, you have for this add-on?
And before we go any further, I would like to declare a actual conflict of interest as an employee of one of the bidders that has been listed here on this form. I am going to be recusing myself from today's discussion regarding this resolution.
All right, thank you. I guess we'll have no questions down there. Is there any questions or comments from the rest of the board? Yes.
So we've worked with Stacy and Whitbeck for quite a long time, and they've been an excellent partner. But it appears, based on kind of the scoring, that Howard S. Wright actually scored very well in regards to everything outside of pricing. And so if they had been in the ballpark in the pricing, then actually they could have been the highest bidder. And the reason I say that or bring that up is because ultimately we are always talking about how do we make sure we diversify our contractors that we work with, and making sure that we're looking across the board to ensure that we're creating a pool of talent throughout each of the contractors and subcontractors we work with. So it's positive to see Howard S. Wright score so well outside of the pricing, and probably Stacy and Whitbeck probably is a little tough to beat on the pricing because they have a lot of skill set in this space. So again, I mean, I'm just excited to see Howard S. Wright, coming in there so close. And hopefully in the future, they have an opportunity to compete more fairly. But again, Stacy and Whitbeck has been a long-term partner, and we were doing the Orange Line. They did very well in regards to minority contracting, women and minority business contracting, and so we appreciate their partnership.
That's good. Other questions or comments on this contract? Again, it's great to see the people participating in the process. It's nice to have 4 really qualified firms. Director Way?
So with the 6 stations that are going to be getting worked on this for a period of time, it says here that between 1 or 2 at a time. And so can you talk a little bit about what the potential service disruptions might be, and how long will it take as these are happening? Because that's a lot of improvements, which is great, but it's also a lot of disruption in East County, where we are seeing a lot of riders depend on transit. So.
Board President and Director Way, happy to answer that question. What we've actually worked out with this previous package, and I want to commend Amy Fimble, who is our project manager and sitting in the audience here, is we've actually through our work with CMG site contractors in the past, we've come up with a way to actually build temporary platforms. And so when we redo a platform, we're actually not closing it for service, but we're sort of moving that platform across the street. Those platforms have similar amenities to our permanent platform, so you will see opportunities for customer information, signage. We don't always have the electronic real-time information, but we're actually not closing the station. Okay. And we're usually able to accomplish the sort of start to finish of a station within a 1 year's time period. So we are trying to minimize those disruptions, and just want to say having the ability to work with a general construction manager, general contractor, allows us to kind of work those details site specifically. So every effort's made to keep our passengers, keep them moving.
Yeah, and safe.
And safe.
Because I just wanted to, so with the temporary platforms, I mean, hopefully they're safe, hopefully they're ADA accessible.
Absolutely, absolutely. All those things are taken into consideration, and we've not had any incidents in terms of customer safety or access issues.
Okay, thank you.
I might just add on to this one. Knowing that this agency was moving from running on the first generation of rail for the first 30 years, and what you have before is an example of that, anytime we do a disruption that impacts the customer of significance, whether the operating budget or capital, we have a cross-functional internal group now that represents the customer, our planning team, engineering, maintenance, operational, truly cross-functional. Anyone can hit the stop button where it doesn't pass the test. And so safety is part of that, and so anything that impacts the customer, we apply that template to ensure we execute at a high level. As you see when we've done the First and Morrison upgrades, all the different upgrades that have been going on now as we rebuild this network. So we apply this template to it. And frankly, it's something, a page I learned out of the Olympic Games. How do you do this and you really execute high? And we actually go to the site and we actually do a walk around, because things you might not see on a chart, you may pick up at ground zero. So all those, we apply it for significant projects that impact the customer.
Great, thank you.
Start here. Go ahead. We were first.
So ultimately, and I was just getting ready to reference exactly the question that Director Way raised, because if I had one of those license plate frames, it would say my other car is a Blue Line Max. Because I ride the Blue Line a lot on the east. I know, it's idea, hashtag. So ultimately, I've seen the Max stations getting improved, and of course, it's an absolute tremendous need. When we do those adjustments, we improve sight lines. As far as safety, lighting, all of those things improve significantly. So it's good to see that and to see that investment being made. And it's actually quite extensive when we put in the temporary stops. I mean, I'm impressed to the degree and the level that we go to in these temporary stops. Sometimes they don't even look temporary. They're that substantial in making sure all the things that Director Way just referenced. And the only reason I'm referencing this is because I've seen it and experienced it as we've done the improvements out in Gresham, the new Lake Oswego. All the improvements we've done so far there, and again, it's been very thoughtful as we've gone through that process. And I have actually, like I said, been impressed with the work that we've done to make sure that all the things are taken care of in the interim as we've done those temporary stops. So overall, I'm just excited. I continue to be excited about the improvements that we're making to the east side and the Blue Line as we continue to upgrade from the times that we first initially built these stops. So the improvements are much needed and much appreciated.
I would just, if I could note, Director Stovall, I really appreciate your comments, and I know the team does as well, and they work very hard to make sure our customers have the minimal amount of discomfort that they have to experience during these. So thank you for those comments.
Director Simmons.
Steve, just a quick question about the price differential between Howard Wright and Stacy Whitbeck. How big of a differential was it?
I was not part of the selection committee. I'd be happy to have Amy come up and see if she could address that question.
Because that seems to be the only indication of why they got knocked out.
So, Stacy and Whitbeck is a rail contractor by trade.
Okay.
Howard S. Wright is, I'm not that familiar with them, but I think they're more vertical construction is what we call it, so building construction. So in terms of having to subcontract sort of the rail components, we're not replacing rail, but we're working around rail. I think Stacy Whitbeck, just with their core line of business, has a little bit of advantage. It's almost similar to what we saw with the Siemens versus others working on Siemens cars. There's just that.
In an attempt to understand and wanting to diversify our contractors, though, it'd be helpful for me to know just what the differential was and whether or not it would have allowed us to utilize another firm, since we see Stacy Whitbeck a lot.
Sure. Let me see if Amy has that information available. If not, we'd be happy to provide that to you. I will note that Howard S. Wright is a new a contractor that we have brought on board as part of our elevator replacement program.
Okay.
So we are bringing them into the fold and getting them additional experience. I do want to note there's also another new firm, Mortensen Construction, who is new to town actually, and it's good to see them
Right.
providing. So let me just turn around and see if Amy has that info. Okay. So.
Okay.
Oh, Steve?
Oh. Oh, Zach, please.
I'm Zach Cooper. I'm the contract manager. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but my recollection is that Howard S. Wright came in somewhere in the order of $1 million-ish for pre-construction services. I think their $1 million-ish for the construction services fee, and then they were slightly lower than Stacy on the pre-con services.
Okay.
And I would note that the reason that the scores for the pricing for HSW and Stacy and Whitbeck are slightly skewed by the fact that Brown came in at an exceedingly low price that we didn't think was really reasonable.
Right. Okay.
Good point.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thanks. Thank you, Sam.
How's the board feeling? Ready to make a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right then, all those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 19-02-15, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Yes. Thank you. So the motion is approved. Thank you very much. So, Mr. General Manager and Board, that appears to be the end of our business meeting. Is there anything else that the board or staff knows that needs to be considered by the board this morning?
Not at this time.
All right, then, I'm going to adjourn our business meeting. And I think I know that Director Way has to leave in a few minutes, but I think maybe we can get right into the next briefing.
Okay.
Because I think there's others that would like to get out of here too, as I'm watching the snow come down.
Yes.
It's not Steve.
Okay. So I'm just going to introduce and call up Bibiana McHugh, who's our manager of mobility and location-based services. And I think you're going to find this quite intriguing. Just before Bibiana walks through this presentation, this is, firstly, I really want to give Bibiana a lot of credit here as she's helped champion and pull together a really important piece for us. If we think about our vision, mission, and values as an integrated mobility agency, this really gets to step one of moving in that direction. But I do really want to give Bibiana and Tim McHugh and others a lot of credit, because there's a lot of work that's gone in the IT engine room, I'll call it, of getting to this next generation of services, not only in TriMet but in the industry. So Bibiana, over to you, and thank you again.
Thanks, Doug, and good morning, Mr. President and board members of the board. I've been really looking forward to briefing you on the FTA Mod Sandbox project, which actually came to a close just last month. In 2016, TriMet applied for a new grant opportunity offered under the FTA Office of Research, Demonstration, and Innovation, and the main objective of the MOD program was to accelerate the transit agency's preparedness for mobility on demand, or door-to-door service that supports the larger goal of mobility management. What TriMet proposed to do was to extend our existing multimodal trip planner to include private mobility service providers. The completion of the two-year project is largely due to a great deal of collaboration between public-private partners. I had a very strong and dedicated team, both also internally at TriMet. Our strategy of leveraging open source, open data, and standards produced a product that can easily and cost-effectively be implemented by other transit agencies. In fact, we worked very closely with RTD Denver, LA Metro, and others to ensure this. Now, a multimodal trip planner is a key component of a plan, book, pay mobility as a service platform, and it's a fundamental step towards providing our customers with convenient door-to-door service options. TriMet actually initiated the development of this open source multimodal trip planner back in 2009 as a cost alternative to transit-only trip planners. And it's now deployed worldwide, including in the nations of Finland, Norway, the Netherlands, all over. And everyone benefits from the improvements we're making now, and we from theirs. So, although multimodal trip planners are emerging in the market just now from the private sector, we're the first U.S. transit agency to offer this service, ensuring equitable and comprehensive travel options to all customers that often the others cannot or do not. So the new trip planner is accessible on both PC and mobile devices, and it includes very modern, simplified, customer-focused features, and additional features will be added as we continue to engage with the customers for comments and feedback. In addition to comprehensive multimodal trips, the transit information is basically based on real-time information. So if there's service disruptions, things like that, it adjusts the trips accordingly. And note that in this example, from taking transit from St. John's to the airport, it can exceed an hour in the evening. This, of course, varies based on time of day and day type. However, when the same trip is combined with Uber or Lyft, the total trip time can be reduced significantly. In addition, the cost of a combined trip is cheaper than taking Uber or Lyft door to door. And although this option may be quicker, it's not always an affordable option for many of our customers. We're just beginning to realize the full advantages of providing mobility services, and this is really an exciting time and a learning experience for both TriMet and our customers. Outside of shared use vehicles, we're providing driving directions to the nearest park and rides with real-time occupancy information. In the future, we can actually reroute travelers accordingly. And in addition to providing bike and walk-only trips, bike-town trips can be planned and combined with transit. And information that you're seeing regarding available docks and bikes are shown in real time. We have a very rich set of data and information that's powering this, including improved sidewalk data and information that supports safer pedestrian routing. And the goal of this is basically to make all the information easily accessible in one place so our customers can make more informed decisions. So next steps, in summary, we're preparing to launch a public beta release next month. And later this year, the new trip planner will be fully integrated into TriMet.org, and we'll continue, of course, to engage with customers to identify and offer useful features. The FTA will be publishing the final project report probably next quarter. More information regarding the project is available on our dashboard at trimet.org/mod. And thanks for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions.
I think we'll probably have some questions. Cause, yes.
I do have a question. This is just based on reading the newspapers. My impression is that Uber and Lyft don't like to share information, that they don't give cities information, for example. How is it that we can integrate them into our platform?
It was actually the most difficult part of the project, and we still don't have everything signed with them. The other 11 Mod Sandbox projects also had a great deal of difficulty with regards to getting agreements signed and getting the information required for our project and for theirs. So they are not very willing to share, and we are actually looking at ways to leverage things in order to improve data access to them. One of them, for instance, is working with City of Portland and other municipalities in our region so that when new mobility service providers come in, there's a clause or a requirement that they provide open data access to us, both in real time and historical as well. We don't have that right now, though.
So maybe I can just add on to this. To Bibiana's team's amazing work here. There's the policy piece that you just gave good examples on, and not just for the city of Portland, but we need to look at this regionally, because people work in West Lynn and may take an Uber or transit to someplace. So what's the net alternative combinations that Bibiana's been nicely articulating here? There's the policy piece, but there's also, I used to do this kind of work in a past private sector life. And so their business development people are, we'll call it the last mile, that gets used pretty interestingly. So this is part of that last mile, but it's an example where we're also at times competing. And so we need to know that, so where we can create market leverage with them, just like Pepsi and Coke trade off and compete. So where we are actually the largest market player of moving people in this region. So when we can partner, we should do so, but at times we need to know to have to compete. So to help compete and create interest, also you need to use your leverage in a responsible way to help them come to the table. Because taking information is a signal that they don't want to compete. They'll take it from us, but they won't give it back. So part of it is we're managing, how do we shape our role in this integrated marketplace? So I think it's still evolving. But we want to encourage, but also make sure we've got our place in this as part of a really important strategic role as an integrator of this region's mobility.
Please.
And the taxi companies have not wanted to participate?
They really don't have data accessible. In order for us to pull information in, we need them to have what's called an API, where we could call, send in requests, and receive information back in real time. And they really don't, have that yet. They will, in the future. And as I said, as this begins to evolve, the plan is to have and offer comprehensive services so that customers can actually look and see what their alternatives are and what's available in the region.
Great presentation, thank you. My question is, what if there are other emerging services, next year, right, or tomorrow, another Uber, another Lyft service? What do we do if there are other companies that are interested in this quote-unquote market share?
I think TriMet and transit agencies in general have advantages that we can offer and compete in this marketplace. For instance, brand recognition. TriMet is well known and trustworthy, and we can offer faster, cheaper, safer, and more reliable service than they can. We also have, the market and the control with regards to real estate.
So do we have, contracts or MOUs that are written up between TriMet and Uber or TriMet and Lyft? I guess I'm just trying to figure out what are the dynamics of the kind of business relationship that we're building with. And I'm also just worried about maybe some legal complications with data sharing.
We're actually working on that now with our legal team.
Yeah.
And like I said, we do not have signed contracts yet in place. We're very close, but that's why I'm not announcing an exact date for the launch.
I think what I might just add to this one is that, and I think you're quite right, today it's Uber and Lyft, tomorrow it's Waymo.
Right.
Right? So there's going to be other products, and we want to encourage, just like we do in our own procurement process, we want to encourage alternatives out there that may not be existing today. Longer term, even Uber is openly declared, they're looking in the air, not just on the ground. So the product of Uber today may be a different product in the future. So this has to include flexibility of others being able to come into this palette and maybe leave. So just a couple of years ago, scooters were not really prevalent, but it's now I think a legitimate way to get around. And so we have to be flexible in this mindset to net mobility, not just one type. So flexibility, I think, is going to be really crucial here. And the other piece also is integrating payment. So this, to me, is laying the foundation, and some really important work here, but this is one step to getting to the frictionless customer experience where they see the menu of options that integrate all the scenarios that they have to do here, which is really hard to get here. And they go, here's your options, here's your time, your combinations, here's how much time it's gonna take, and here's the price. Hit confirm and go, so to speak. Doesn't hurt when I say it fast, but but I think the more we can do that, the more we will capture the mind of those who have choices available to them in a car as a competitive alternative to integrate all these, and hopefully taxis too. We need to encourage them to be successful in this model in the future. So.
Director Stovall.
And I assume the more we do this, the better our APIs, and the interactions are going to occur. So, as new services come online, it becomes easier for us. We've got a template more so in regards to the agreement, but we also have this integration with our platform. The more we do this, the more we get that well-defined, regardless of who they are. And we can standardize to some degree on our software platform to say, well, we've got to communicate in this way, and so on and so forth. But I do want to put in a bid for one thing that I would really like to see, and that's the concept of being able to know if there's openings at various park and rides. I mean, so that's one thing that I run into sometimes. I get to a park and ride and I drive around and I'm like, oh, if I only knew there was no parking spaces here.
That's my point. And private parking lots too.
Yep.
Yeah.
We just need the data.
Yeah, well, we would have to actually implement similar to what they have at the port, at the airport, where a system can tell us if a parking space is empty or open. Tim's back there saying, "You got to be kidding me, Travis. Are you actually saying this out loud?"
Tim just passed out.
But that could come way down the road. But we need to put it into our thinking because that would be a nice feature.
I wanted to echo the sentiment, not more so because of the fact that it brings another partner to the table that's already part of the transaction ecosystem, but they have real estate that they're starting to think about as this kind of shared infrastructure for sharing of vehicles. Some of those, like especially Smart Park, already has Zipcar and some shared vehicle dedicated installs. To see that idea extended into the scooters, or potentially serving in a ride share kind of model, carpooling services. I think that just facilitates their transition into being part of the infrastructure, and maybe the conversation doesn't go as slowly as with Ubers or someone with a lot of layers in their organization still. So I think that's a fantastic extension. I can't wait for this thing to be available. Frankly, this is great.
Yes. Keep moving forward. I mean, I think this is exciting, and it's just an unbelievable opportunity for the customers out there, the people who need to get from point A to point B, to have this tool. So I think leading this effort is really good, and I'm glad that we're here where we are.
And I want to acknowledge, although we are through the app and through the rollout of the Hop Card really driving some of this conversation, I imagine, with Uber, Lyft, and some of these corporate partners, it's important to leverage other agencies, even though they might not be as mature perhaps in rolling out this kind of service, that if they hint at all that this is something they might be moving towards, it might just help us bring the right tone to our corporate partners to understand that this is something that it's not just the Northwest in little Portland talking about this.
Right.
I think the FTA has a role in this. So part of the funding they do with this by nature, they're not the doers of the policy supporters, and that's where some of the funding comes from, that they share and transfer knowledge. But to Tim and Bibiane and all the others on the teams, there's a pretty collegial set of industry get-togethers, I'll call it, through APTA and other places that share not only domestically in North America, but globally. So this is a sharing space right now. So I think that there's a natural flow of information transfer that Bibiane and others have nicely got in place. So I think you're quite right. But if we look at integrating this crucially with payment, then we can have conversations. For me, I've always looked at, even having discussions with Sound Transit, King County. They don't have a Hop Card, but they're about to go to the next modification of their Orca card. why can't you, for all those travelers who have rail connection to airports, we start integrating multiple transit agencies, those who travel all the time, that your card's good everywhere. So, and we integrate this experience of intermodality in addition to payment mobility. And so it removes the barriers that I have to have a card for every city I go to, which I do. I have, you have the Octopus card, you have the Orca card, you have the Hop card. So we can be, I think, an integrator of all these services, but we have taken a different path than some. So the Bibiana correctly outlined earlier in the week for me that the Uber and RTD example, well, they have hitched their wagon to Uber and RTD. This is a mobility one that's covering the spectrum of not just tying to one type of service, which gets to Director Way's point. So we want to be the integrator on a breadth of alternatives that may come and go, not be trapped and hitch our wagon to one type. So.
Wow, thank you very much.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Anything else, Mr. General Manager, for us today?
I think we're just going to call it a day.
Thank you very much. Good, exciting
Thanks to
stuff on
Bibiana
this
and to
agenda.
Tim and others again. Very well done.
Be safe out there, folks.
Yeah, safe travels.
Heading south. We'll see how far I get.